Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Thursday midday edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
How's everybody doing on this fine Thursday? Appreciate you all being here. We got 262 strong in the Rumble chat. Our Rumble back-end chat is a little wonky, but Jake's app seems to be working. 518 strong in the YouTube chat. Shout out to O George for gifting 10 memberships on the stream. You gifted 10 memberships on the a previous stream, O George, that I did not thank you for because I didn't realize until the stream was over. Because we can't see that on our back end. But today, since the back end is messed up, I can see it on the front end on my second monitor. So shout out to O George. That's very generous. Thank you very much for doing that, O George. Appreciate
awesome.
that. Yes. All right, we got to jump right in today because Russell has, what do you got, sensory deprivation?
Yeah, man, I am going full William Hurt, altered states, primeval man, opening up the quantum realm. It's going to be trippy, man.
That's
right. Trippy. I've wanted to do that since my mother had the poor judgment to bring a 10-year-old to see altered states.
There you go. Well, today is the
and
day.
I was fascinated by that whole idea.
Yeah,
and I haven't done
sounds
it.
Like something.
I mean, I don't have ayahuasca. That's the only downside.
Right. How long does it last?
90 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, man. You're going to connect with my inner child, all that stuff.
There you go. He'll be a new man on Sunday.
And I also saw at the most awesome movie theater that I know of in the country, North Park Theater, I saw Cronenberg's new movie last night.
There you go.
Which was very good. Very good. If you're into Cronenberg, you'll like it. If you're not, do not see that.
You won't. Yes. He is an acquired taste, but a great talent, of course. All right, let's jump right in because we do have a hard out in exactly 3 hours.
Let's rock and roll.
Let's make this happen. All right, folks. This is a story that just kind of keeps getting cringier and cringier here. Yeah, there's this book coming out. You hear the book coming out, the expose on the Joe Biden decline cover-up. Real shocking expose here. So, Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, who writes for Politico, who was given an award at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, they have a book coming out about the cover-up of Joe Biden's decline throughout his candidacy in 2024. So here is Jake Tapper dropping some bombshells, quote unquote, about this new book. They're really, really pumping this book pretty hard.
Thompson from Axios and I wrote a book. It's coming out next Tuesday. It's called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. The book is drawn from more than 200 interviews with mostly Democratic insiders, almost all of them after the election. And one of the things we were shocked to learn, the White House physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, talked about how if Biden had one more fall, he might actually need to be in a wheelchair. But this was all put off until after the election. They did not want images of Biden in a wheelchair out there. You might recall that Biden started to have problems with a shuffling gait that the administration was.
We do recall, but we were told that those were cheap fakes. We were told
yeah,
those videos were fake.
That was nothing. That was a fugazi. It was a fugazi.
Yeah, it was a fugazi.
Very sensitive about. There was a time when they started having people walk with him.
Yeah,
to
we
Marine
saw all
One.
of it. Yeah, we know.
Those people were there to
yeah.
kind of like hide the fact that his gait was as bad as it was, and also have them there in case he stumbled. The White House would say that this gait issue was because Biden had fallen after the election of 2020, but the truth is that it didn't have to do with that. Dr. O'Connor's medical report said that that injury was completely healed. This had to do with other degenerative problems.
Wow. Wow, great stuff.
Where the fuck do you get the balls?
Yeah, right.
Where the fuck do you get the...
Yeah. Yeah. So Alex Thompson, co-author of the book, says, I'd tune in to Jake Tapper, the lead at CNN at 5 p.m. Eastern today for the latest reporting from Original Sin. Now, to give you an idea how much people care about this book, that has 140,000 views and only 17 likes. To 44 comments. So that took a pretty bad ratio. Jake Tapper took an even worse ratio, though. More news from the book coming at 5 p.m. 137,000 views, only 88 likes to 443 comments. So some of the comments here are this headline reminding, hey, this is hardly an expose. Biden's decline is obvious to everyone but the press, dated April 25th, 2022. Before the campaign season even started, before the midterms. J.D. Vance, owner of Vance's Messy Couches, I like that screen name. Fuck Jake Tapper. Either he was covering up for Biden's mental issues before he wrote his book, or he wrote the book in a disgusting attempt to cash in. Either way, fuck that guy. And yes, so they're really, like, this is amazing. So you talk about all the incentives of corporate media and indie media kind of like colliding. This is an example where not only does a guy like Jake Tapper make way too much money at CNN, but he gets to use his platform at CNN as a sandwich board for his side projects where he makes the real money, like his books and all that thing, right? So
that's it. These guys make money on lectures, speaking tours. There's a whole hidden world that people don't even know about, where people get paid to go speak in Dubai. You might have Joe Scarborough standing right next to Mike Johnson at one of these events. Nobody hears about this.
Right, exactly. So not only do they make millions of dollars at their day job, they use their day job as a springboard to make even more money.
That's where the real money is.
That's where the real money is. Exactly. So I say Jake Tapper, because this is a New Yorker article with some juicy tidbits of the book. The purpose of the media is to report the truth in real time, not to gaslight the public for 2 years and then cash in on an expose of your own cover-up. That's what this is. So you lie for 2 years. You get paid a lot of money to lie for 2 years at CNN. You get a weekly check to lie about Biden on CNN. Then you write a book exposing how you lied for 2 years, and you make even more money off of that. So I said, no one should buy your book. It'll only encourage you. No one really has to buy their book, though, because they're teasing so much of it out that we pretty much get it. We pretty much got it back in 2022. We got it back in 2019 when Biden's own Democratic rivals like Julian Castro and Cory Booker were pointing to the very obvious fact that this guy is losing it.
Andrea Woodruff said it on the air.
Yeah. Andrea Mitchell.
Was it Andrea Mitchell?
Yeah, I don't know who Andrea Woodruff is. Who is Andrea Woodruff?
I'm probably mixing up two names.
Probably mixing up.
There is a Woodruff.
There is a Woodruff. All right, maybe that's not it. So here's a trip. So here is Jake Tapper ripping Democrats for their smear campaign against heroic Wall Street Journal reporters, because it was a Wall Street Journal expose that I guess originally blew the lid on Biden's decline. And like I said, by originally, we're already talking about years after it was obvious to the general public. So it's not even fair to call this an expose. But here he is.
You were a monster attacking a man with a stutter.
Right.
A man who bravely overcame a stutter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here is Jake Tapper having the authors of this Wall Street Journal article on. Watch how he introduces them.
Reporters were covering this. Intensely during the Biden years. Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes, they are with the Wall Street Journal. They reported on the decline of Biden's mental acuity back in June of last year. The piece then, quote, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping. Participants in meetings said the 81-year-old president performed poorly at times. The White House said Biden is sharp.
I mean, it's very strange. I just saw Cronenberg, because aren't those the creepy twins from Dead Ringers?
Oh, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, those kind of look like.
That is very Cronenberg casting. Like, one of them would have a vagina in the middle of her chest.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
They'd both be dating Jake Tapper at the same time. They look very surprised to be there.
She has the lavender jacket with the black shirt. That's in now. Everybody's wearing that now. Pam Bondi, Carolyn Levitt.
The Trump administration.
Yeah.
Then, quote, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping. Participants in meetings said the 81-year-old president performed poorly at times. The White House said Biden is sharp and his critics are playing partisan politics, unquote. This is not the first time you guys have been on. I said it last year before the election, and I'll say it again. The journalism you did was vital, and the smear campaign by Democrats against you two is disgraceful. So thanks for being here.
Really?
So what you published was before the debate, before the disaster, and before our book and the leaks and of our book. And obviously we had, and you probably found it too, because I know you've done subsequent reporting after the election. People are more willing to talk after the election, after the stakes are gone. Do you feel vindicated? How do you feel?
Yeah, I do. I do feel that our reporting has been vindicated.
As well you should. But that intro there where he talks about how they were smeared by many, including himself, which he fails to acknowledge there. So Glenn Greenwald posts, Jake Tapper's book tour is the most brazenly fraudulent scam. Tapper today denounces Democrats as disgraceful for their smear campaign against heroic Wall Street Journal reporters who reported on Biden's cognitive decline. See video below. It was Tapper who smeared the Wall Street Journal for that. So here is Greenwald offering his take on this. There's a brief introduction, but he found it, so he deserves it.
And look, Joe Biden has a problem with cognitive decline. And Jake Tapper was one of the primary people in the media, not just covering it up and denying it, but aggressively attacking and maligning the character of anyone who was raising this as recently as last year, presumably when he was working on his book, or at least anticipating the book. I think actually they announced the book in early 2025. It usually takes a lot longer than 3-4 months to write a book like that, but they're probably rushing to do it so they could be first. So maybe he wasn't writing the book at the time, but this is all what Jake Tapper is purporting to blow the lid off of what he was doing.
And narcissism, false claims to the Wall Street Journal about President Biden's mental fitness and acuity. He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible, but I don't understand the outrage. Quote, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping, unquote. The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs.
Wow, look at that. He just pulled up that same headline. He just brought the women on who wrote that article talking about how the Democrats maligned them. Let's back that up a second.
Horrible, but I don't understand the outrage. Quote, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping, unquote. The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs.
Yeah, that's right-wing fake news, Fox News, Murdochs thing. That's icky. Wow.
Like the Hunter Biden laptop.
Wow. So, this, I'm always hesitant to cover this because I feel like, what else are we going to say about it that we haven't said? But what Greenwald said, it's so brazenly fraudulent. You have the women on who wrote the article. You smeared the article. This is not like, it was 7 years ago and I was a different man back then and, the time has passed.
Yeah.
I saw something differently back then than the way I see it now. We all say things that I'm sure we would like to go back and, that was a mistake. This was like a year ago where you were clearly covering up the most obvious fact in the world. This is not a matter of philosophy or opinion or perception. This was the most obvious thing in the world to everyone except Democrats surrounding Biden and the media, who may as well be an arm of the Democratic Party. And now you're going to cash in on a book? they should be shamed into donating the profits from that book to some charity. Like the
like
public should
Alzheimer's
not
research.
like Alzheimer's research, Parkinson's cures, things like that. Yes, whatever ails Joe Biden, they should be shamed into donating that money. How can you be so shameless as to gaslight the public for 2 years and then cash in on a book about how the public has been gaslit? And now all of a sudden you're blaming it on Democrats. Yeah, it was definitely Democrats, and it was you with your help. It's amazing. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, there's almost nothing more cringe than these moments where the media pretend that they're examining themselves, and they always miss the point on purpose because they cannot admit that they are state media for a particular wing of the establishment. They can never admit that.
Right.
So with this, they have to spin it as, yeah, they lied to us. We just didn't see what was happening. Okay, so taking you at your word, which is ridiculous, but if we did take you at your word, aren't you saying that you're all grossly incompetent and unsuited to your job?
Right.
Like if that is true, if you are among the only people in the country who did not see that this man's brains were leaking out of his ears, should you really be trusted to impart the news, and particularly given that news has become so merged with editorial, to offer your opinions on what you observe in the nation and the political scene and current events? Your opinion is useless. You missed the most obvious and arguably important story of the last several years. Why aren't you resigning right now in disgrace?
Right. Journalists are supposed to. The reason journalists are journalists, like, what skill set do you need to be a journalist? Well, you have to be able to, like, basically write articles. Like, you need to have some basic mastery of language and structure and stuff like that. But what separates the best journalists from the worst, and what qualifies you to be a journalist, is your ability to smell bullshit when people in power are bullshitting you. That's
what you're being paid for. That's right. Literally what you're being paid for.
Exactly. So the fact that everyone in the country smelled it and you didn't, well, yeah, what does that say? It says you're impossibly inept. Of course, this was a systematic, intentional cover-up by the likes of Jake Tapper, amongst many others, but Jake Tapper's the only one with the chutzpah, apparently, and Alex Thompson, to say, you know what? Rather than hide our heads in shame about this, let's write a book pretending we weren't a part of it, and we'll make a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, this is what they always do. Right after 2016, the media completely dodged the subject of the, by some estimates, $1 trillion in free advertising that they gave to Donald Trump. This is where the interests of the Democratic Party in covering up for its failures dovetailed perfectly with the interests of the media in covering up for its responsibility for the election results. And the product of that was Russiagate. They both had a deep vested interest in pushing a narrative that distracted attention from their own incompetence.
Exactly. So Jake Tapper's book is coming out, and we feel a little conflicted about covering it too much because it can get a bit redundant and repetitive. Yeah. But on the other hand, the more we show you of the book, the less likely you are to actually buy it. So there is some sort of civic duty we are fulfilling here in leaking out parts of the book that have been leaked to the press here. So here's a juicy piece. Joe Biden didn't recognize George Clooney at 2024 campaign fundraiser, new book says. So here is the piece of video that went viral. We'll hold the sound for copyright concerns. But here's Joe Biden being led off the stage by Barack Obama, clearly kind of forgetting what he's supposed to do. Okay, the show is over. Bye-bye. Let's go. He's standing there like a stone. Hey, it's time to go.
Wow, for a fifth grade talent show, this is a pretty packed house.
It's a pretty packed house here today, exactly.
I didn't think my close-up magic would go over so well.
Yeah, so that went viral because everybody was like, what the hell? That was a Radio City Music Hall. That was the largest fundraiser of its kind in history at the time. Donald Trump would later break that record not long after. I broke it, you know. It didn't take me very long. It was very easy to do. So George Clooney turned on Biden because Biden didn't recognize him despite being a famous person who's doing a fucking fundraiser for you, says Flapper with a bit of indignance there in his tone. But here is an excerpt from what could be the New Yorker article or the book itself. I assume both. I assume they published an excerpt of the book in the New Yorker article that Tapper and Thompson just came out with. This looks like the New Yorker magazine font. You know, George, the assisting aide told the president, gently reminding him who was in front of him. Yeah, the president said to one of those most recognizable men in the world, the host of this lucrative fundraiser. Thank you for being here. Okay, so you know George. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Now, George Clooney organized this fundraiser.
Isn't that the guy? Didn't the intelligence people showed me a video? He robbed a casino. This guy, didn't he?
Yeah, right.
Didn't he? With 11 other guys.
Yeah, with the 11 other guys. Yeah, aren't you laying low now? Aren't you a doctor? Yeah.
I thought he was a doctor. Didn't I see him operating on somebody once?
I thought Edward R. Murrow was dead. I thought
he's come back. He's come back to endorse me.
Yeah. Is that Batman? I did Batman. He was the worst Batman.
Where's Robin? That was the one with they put the nipples on the suit. I didn't like
the
that
nipples
very
and
much.
the Iceman.
Yeah,
Iceman.
Yeah, it was like a
and
gay
that nasty
Fantasia.
bitch who gives you the herpes when she kisses you, something like that.
Yeah, like poison ivy. That's what I used to call Jill before she got the shot.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Hi, Mr. President, Clooney said. How are you? The president replied. How was your trip? Clooney asked. It was fine, the president said. It seemed clear that the president had not recognized Clooney. And then the giveaway comes in just a bit here. It was not okay, recalled the Hollywood VIP who had witnessed this moment. That thing, the moment where you recognize someone you know, especially a famous person who's doing a fucking fundraiser for you, it was delayed. It was uncomfortable. George Clooney, the aide clarified for the president. Oh, yeah, Biden said. Hi, George. So then he lights up when the guy says, this is George Clooney. Clooney was shaken to his core. Wow. The president hadn't recognized him, a man he had known for years. Clooney had expressed concern about Biden's health before. A White House aide had told him a few months before that they were working on getting the president to take longer steps when he walked. But obviously the problem went far beyond his gait. This was much graver. So Hakeem Jeffries was asked about this, and townhall.com, which is, a conservative handle, no doubt. But when they're right, they are right. You don't have to be partisan to acknowledge, yes, train wreck. Hakeem Jeffries has no idea how to get out of being questioned about his role in covering up Joe Biden's mental and physical decline. This is hard to watch. Yes, it is.
Biden didn't even recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser the movie star was actually hosting for him. Why should voters trust Democrats when it's clear so many in your party went to great lengths to keep Biden's condition hidden from the public?
I can't tell you what happened between George Clooney and President Biden. I wasn't at that event. What I can say is that we're not looking backward. We're going to continue to look forward because at this moment, we've got real problems that need to be addressed on behalf of the...
What I can tell you about that is never mind that. Let's just pretend that didn't happen.
American people, including...
And let's fire David Hogg. All the people who were in high places when this world historic political debacle took place, they all have their jobs. New kid comes and says, hey, let's clear out some of the old people who have worn out their welcome and can't get it done anymore. No, he's got to go. He's got to go. But this is your leader. This is the leader of the party saying, yeah, no, we're just going to look forward.
The Republican effort to snatch away health care, snatch away food assistance, and hurt veterans.
You interacted with President Biden during those days, those final days he was president of the United States. Did you sense there was a major deterioration?
Well, in the conversations that I was able to have on behalf of the House Democratic Caucus in those final days, we simply expressed our perspective as to what would be best for the party at that given moment in time. President Biden subsequently made the decision that he was going to pass the baton to Vice President Kamala Harris. Of course, that was a decision that we supported strongly.
Just very quickly, I want to ask you, Congressman Jeffries, you say we're not looking back, we're looking forward, but what happened in the past has to do with what's going to happen in the future and whether voters can trust Democrats. As you look back, you were in a leadership position when President Biden decided to run again. Should you have done more at that point to intervene?
It's a great question in terms of whether voters can trust Democrats or not. Every single high-profile special election that has taken place since President Trump was inaugurated, a special election victory in Iowa in January, a special election victory in New York in February.
All right, we got it. So clearly not going to answer the question. Wow, just absolutely nothing to say. What can you say? What can you say? You can't wiggle out of that. You can't wiggle out of that. The fact that this party, which we're going to cover later in the show, is running the new kid out of town just shows you how incorrigible it is. Like the level of if you take them at face value and assume they were not lying, which is of course absurd. All right, let's give them the benefit of every doubt in saying this is just incompetence. That is a world historic political failure with pretty disastrous consequences, according to themselves. They were talking about how Donald Trump is this existential threat, and at the same time you're saying that, you're trotting a guy out there who doesn't recognize George Clooney, one of the most famous people to ever walk the earth, on the night he is hosting a $25 million fundraiser for your campaign.
Okay, so this is why and hey man, the odds are still in their favor. This is why I do not feel that the Democrats in the midterms are as much of a lock as it may appear right now. They are so freaking awful that they could lose to Trump on the same basis that they've lost to him in the past. If you are inclined to vote leftward, broadly speaking, the Democrats are offering you literally less than nothing. Less than nothing. They are telling you very clearly, even the smallest modicum of a suggestion that maybe the party shouldn't be a gerontocracy run by failures who led the party to the place it is now, virtual political irrelevance. They are not going to focus their efforts on saying, hey, you know what? The new kid might have a point. Jesus Christ, he even brought James Carville around to that.
Right.
Freaking James Carville said, you know what? We need more like him.
Piss and vinegar in that kid.
That kid's got spunk. He's got spunk. We used to call that goat semen.
That kid's got a dick like a jar of Tabasco. Yeah.
Kid is shooting goat semen. It's the most potent. Most potent. You can impregnate a pig with that. And you cannot get the DNC not only to tolerate him, you can't even get them not to kick this fucking kid out. Very thin pretext. That's why that's why I say, I wouldn't guarantee that the Republicans don't take the midterms, or that the Democrats don't underperform at the very least, because they did not learn anything from this. They're incapable of learning anything from it. For them to learn something, their intention would have to be political impact. That is not their intention. Their intention is to keep the grift going, where they make money for posturing on behalf of the people who pay them to posture. So they're not really incentivized to do meaningful soul searching and reform as a party. There are too many people in control of it that benefit from it the way that it is. Now, if you are into Donald Trump, hey man, look at what the vote, in spite of what a lot of the media want to tell you about disappointed Trump voters, of course there are some of them, but not most of them. So again, you're fighting something with nothing. And that has been the dynamic in all of Trump's victories. The Democrats are offering nothing. What Trump's offering, if you're into that, it's something.
All right. Salamander Fry says, hey, you guys are all right. You're all right too, Salamander Fry. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Let's see. GDNPB. I don't think Jake has thought this defense through. We're so dumb we couldn't figure out what we were watching, even though everyone else did. Trust us. Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Giovanni Polidori says, why would Jill trot him out on The View? Yeah, this recent string of appearances, like, I don't understand that. I really don't. Oh,
yeah, they're actually asking him to stop. They've got that much sense.
Yeah, right, yeah. They're like, okay, that's enough of you. Right, maybe they're selling a book. All right. Perfected.
What about painting? Look at George. He paints.
Yeah, paint. There you go. Perfected my cold fusion system, says Hillary Hinton. Exxon wants me to lead their alternative fuel division. I'm interviewing with their VP of talent acquisition, Johnny Cannoli, at their Jersey Pine Barrens location. There you go. Well, congratulations, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that. Good luck with that. Tapper's next bombshell is going to be Roosevelt's polio. Yes, good one. Haha. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Hey, folks, smash that like button for us. Smash that subscribe button on YouTube. Smash that follow button over on Rumble. Thanks to all who joined us for the Misty Winston Show last night. Great episode last night. A couple of great guests, Hammett Dardigan and Kyle Anzalone. Really fun time was had by all. We already dropped one of the clips. We'll be dropping the rest of them in due time. But right now, let's go to some Russia-Ukraine developments. The breaking news for today.
Yes. So Putin is a no-show at the big dance. Volodymyr Zelensky was overheard in the parking lot to say, stranded at the drive-in, branded a fool. And here's him right after that being asked about Putin not showing up.
President Zelensky, Sky News, do you have a message for Vladimir Putin?
I'm here. I think this is very clear message. Thank you very much.
All right. So his message to Putin, I am here. The Russians had their own messages, which were kind of very rap battle. We'll take a look at that. Putin did not come to Turkey despite days of international pressure. Instead, Russia's negotiating team, which touched down in Istanbul on Thursday morning, was led by a hardline historian and Kremlin aide who has denied Ukraine's right to exist. Quote, we need to understand the level of the Russian delegation and what their mandate is if they are capable of making any decisions themselves, Zelensky said from the tarmac at Ankara airport. From what we see, it looks more like a decorative deployment by Moscow, he added. Now, the Russians had quite a response to that statement. This is their foreign ministry spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, eviscerating Zelensky top to bottom. Who uses the phrase theater prop? A clown, a loser, a person with an unknown education in relation to people who have more than just a basic education, academic degrees, and services to the fatherland, who have proven their level of professionalism through their work. He calls them a sham. Who does he think he is? On what basis can a person who came to power on the back of information technology and huge capital investments made in him, only so that he could work as a tool, doubt the professional level of anyone at all? This is a person who has no right to speak like that about the highest professionals in their field. Damn, yeah. They're not playing. Mr. Trump, who has been pushing for a swift end to the 3-year war, said he might go to Turkey if he saw meaningful progress. Quote, hey, you know, if something happened, I'd go on Friday, he said during a visit to Qatar on Thursday. Speaking at a NATO meeting in the Turkish coastal city of Antalya, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington was impatient and willing to consider any mechanism to achieve a lasting end to the war. So here is Trump being asked about Putin not showing up.
Are you disappointed by that? No, I didn't anticipate. I actually said, why would he go if I'm not going? Because I wasn't going to go. I wasn't planning to. I would go. But I wasn't planning to go, and I said, I don't think he's going to go if I don't go, and that turned out to be right. But we have people there Marco, as you know, is doing a fantastic job. Marco's there, Secretary of State, and we have people there. But I didn't think it was possible for Putin to go if I'm not there.
You know, they say it's bad luck to see the tool of Western imperialism before the peace deal. So I was told by my people not to go. Rubio,
just the way he talks, it's like his brain does not anticipate the next word. Yeah, no, I was gonna go. Then I decided maybe I shouldn't go. Why would I go if he's not gonna go? I mean, he would go if I went, but maybe I'll go. Maybe I won't go. If I go, hey, we have Marco. He's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long way of saying, no, I'm not surprised he didn't go. I'm not planning on going.
I used to call him Little Marco, but his wife says he got an implant.
Yeah.
Rubio is expected in Istanbul on Friday for meetings with European counterparts to discuss the conflict in Ukraine, according to the U.S. State Department. Russia insists the talks address what it calls the root causes of the conflict, including a denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine. These vague terms, remember this is CBS News, folks, these vague terms that Moscow has used to justify its invasion are widely rejected by Kyiv and the West. You know, I'm just going to editorialize a little bit here. There's been a lot of conversation of late because the Russians were not invited to major World War II ceremonies recently, in spite of the fact that they actually won the freaking war. There's no real question about that. Imagine if your country lost 20 million people in an invasion by the Nazis, and the country next door has Nazi battalions, has officers and soldiers with clear Nazi symbols who sometimes say, get a medal from Jon Stewart, a popular American comedian. You might be sensitive about that subject. You might be sensitive about it. It might not just be a trivial bugaboo, as the Western media would make it out. Officials in Moscow have also repeated that Ukraine must cede territory occupied by Russian troops and pull out of some areas still under Ukrainian control. Russia insists the talks address what it calls the root causes of the conflict, including a denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine. These vague terms that Moscow used to officials in Moscow have also repeated that Ukraine must cede territory occupied by Russian troops and pull out of some areas still under Ukrainian control. Kyiv wants an immediate 30-day ceasefire and says it will not recognize its territories as Russian. But Zelensky has acknowledged that Ukraine might only get them back through diplomatic means. Now, that is just an absolutely nonsensical assertion, because there's absolutely no way you're getting them back through diplomatic means. So you're acknowledging that militarily you're losing. So on what basis are you even asserting that you need to get these territories back? So this is Lavrov. Zelensky's having a tough couple of months, I got to say, between getting humiliated in the Oval Office and now the rap battle that the Russians are throwing down. I don't know how this guy's going to pleasure his wife when he gets back. First, Zelensky was making some kind of statements that he demands for Putin to come personally. A pathetic person. But everyone understands except for maybe him and those who are his masters. Then his seniors explained to him that he shouldn't be acting this stupid, and that negotiations need to happen. Negotiations need a chance. Nobody guarantees everything will go smoothly without problems. On the contrary, there for sure will be, as it was 3 years ago in Istanbul, when the principles we agreed on were ready to be put into an agreement, and the English forbade that. To the Kyiv regime to continue that process that could have ended in a settlement. And now I think the English, like guides, are leading Zelensky through the jungle of the international politics. So what's he talking about? I'm sure a lot of our audience will recall what he's making reference to there. Boris Johnson, when he was still Prime Minister of the UK, pressured Zelensky very early in the war, before there had been a lot of casualties. This could have been all over back in 2022, according to reporting that's been pretty well confirmed. Zelensky and the Russians, they were about to make a peace deal. They were working out the terms. And Boris Johnson told Zelensky, according to the reporting, you can make a deal with Putin, but we won't make a deal with Putin. We see that he's much weaker than we thought he was, and we want to keep the pressure on him. So this war could have ended years ago. Lavrov and the other speakers, Zakharova, probably getting that name wrong. They both indicated he's a puppet. That's how they see him. So it's maybe in this light that we should look at this video of Zelensky repeatedly rejecting the idea of talks with Putin over the years. Was this him, or was this what he was told to say? There is nothing to talk about with this president of Russia. Negotiations are out of the question. Are you ready to talk to Putin? There is nothing to talk to him about. What should I talk to him about?
Not interesting to speak. I don't have any relations with Russia. We don't want to make any dialogue with terrorists. На що повинна піти Росія? Бажано на 3 букви.
I want to end the war. We want a sustainable peace for Ukraine. I will be in Turkey this Thursday, May 15th, and I'm expecting Putin in Turkey. Personally, we are ready to talk to end the war. Okay, so I don't think it's any coincidence that Zelensky absolutely refused to talk to Putin, even going so far as to create legislation to make it a crime to negotiate with Putin. Many people say he's in violation of his own edict that negotiations with Putin are illegal by demanding these negotiations. He denies that. But yeah, it's not a coincidence, I think, that he was told in 2022 to keep the pressure on Putin and to keep the war going. And now, as the United States cools on the war, and the Europeans, in spite of their chest pounding at first, as it becomes more and more clear that the Trump administration is serious about no longer supporting these efforts financially, militarily, and materially the way they have done, the Europeans are not so hot on this war anymore either. Lo and behold, as soon as the West lost interest in continuing this, now Zelensky wants to talk. So I think what Lavrov is saying is right. He's a puppet. He's always been a puppet. He came to power on clandestine Western financial and propaganda support. And he's just as he pretends to be this strong leader asserting himself, he's very clearly just being controlled by his handlers.
Well, yeah, obviously. Now you could speculate consciously or unconsciously. It doesn't really make a difference. I mean, it was obvious from day one that this was going to be the outcome. In fact, now it looks like, based on Putin's absence here, that Ukraine's going to have to give up more than they would have had they just made a deal and agreed to those first 3 terms that Russia laid out, which was, of course, neutrality for Ukraine, independence for those eastern regions, and, of course, recognition of Crimea as Russian. That could have avoided all of this. And instead, you have a disastrous, horribly tragic, and violent war, which has killed so many people on both sides that Russia feels, hey, you know what? Just like in World War II when we spilled all that blood and the world, not only did they not thank us for it, they really punished us for it.
Right.
We spilled all this blood over this. We're going to have to get a little more out of this. And that was the danger of this. Putin actually offered those original terms for a pretty long time, Yep. But, when you push a thing this far, now, of course, they feel like they're going to have to get something more because they paid for it in all of that blood.
Right.
And the tragic thing on the other side is that the Ukrainians pay for it in a lot of blood on their side of things. You know, I have no reason to feel loyalty to either side of this conflict. You know, I don't really feel a reason to take sides in that respect. That's why we never should have been funding one side of this. We should have intervened as a neutral arbiter and brokered a peace. If peace was what was on our mind, it was clearly not. It was clearly not. We were clearly agitating this, and whether Zelensky knew that or not, it's difficult to say. The guy's a comedian. The guy's a fool. The guy's a joke.
Right.
You know, and so could he have been manipulated into thinking he was going to be the Churchill of his time? Perhaps. Could he have just been following orders every step of the way? Perhaps. I tend to think it was probably the former. I think this guy believed what a lot of much shrewder and more experienced political actors were telling him. Boris Johnson tells him, hey, you don't have to take the deal. You know, we'll support you if you don't. I mean, that's like, you know, you're a mobster and you hand a kid a gun and say, you know, you don't have to rob that card game, but you might get on some people's radar if you do. You know, what happened to Jackie Jr. That's what he is. He's the Jackie Jr. of world politics, Volodymyr Zelensky. Guy nudged along by Uncle Ralphie there. Hey, you know, this is how we got started. You know, this is how you make a name for yourself. It's really tragic. It's really horrible. I mean, and the numbers are just obscene. Like I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands for nothing. And now you're really stuck. Now you're really stuck in a situation that you don't know how you can get your way out of, because now the Russians feel like, hey, we paid for this in so much blood. We need more than we asked for at first.
Right.
So now what do you do?
And they're continuing to advance. Like the whole premise that you're going to get a country that is winning the war, taking more and more territory to negotiate terms that only a losing nation would accept, that you're going to withdraw from all this territory like none of this ever happened. Why would they do that?
Right.
Why would they do that? I mean, it's a non-starter. The Russians are not going to agree to anything, I think, less than taking those eastern regions that are predominantly Russian in culture and language. That's it. That's going to be the bare minimum, and obviously no discussion of them joining NATO.
Right. Exactly. So a horrible situation that continues on with, unfortunately, not much end in sight based on the developments of the day. So that came and went. With disappointing results. Jessica May, thanks for the $4.99. Did you see the Don Lemon segment calling Trump a commie uniform, a thumbnail, comparing him to Bernie and saying MAGA is further left than Dems? No. I didn't get a notification for that. That's weird, because
I mean that sounds like a Don Lemon segment.
Yeah, it sounds like
that guy may literally be the dumbest person talking on a microphone in the world. Like, I can't think of anyone dumber than Don Lemon who does that for a living.
Janice Anderson, purchase Tapper's book, Not Worth a Decline in IQ. Only people with their own brains leaking out wood. Don't trust MSMD, NC, RNC. F them all the way off. Thank you, Janice Anderson. Appreciate that. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $9.99 super sticker. Appreciate that. The ratioing says, I kindly request you reconsider your support for Mamdani. We're not supporting Mamdani. He's not the dilettante that one might think. He comes from a great stock. You should look into his father's politically astute bibliography. No, we never.
Actually, what I said was, when I met him at the Tesla protest, I was not impressed. He strikes me as somebody who locked onto the progressive movement as the best path forward for him politically. He struck me as insincere and an operator, very much a politician. And the fact that he's not making the rounds on shows like ours.
And like Blakely reached out to him. He blew her off. A lot of people with pretty big followings, and New York-based followings, more importantly.
What does that tell you? He does not want to actually be thought of as connected to any kind of left movement. He's just play acting because he sees that base as his best path around the Democratic establishment, not because he wants to defeat that establishment, but if I had to guess, he doesn't have the right contacts. He doesn't have the right ins to get in, the Cuomo way.
Right.
So he's coming in as an outsider. So he's trying to take advantage of this progressive movement by saying some things that they'll like to hear. So no, I mean, I met him. I trust my gut. He struck me as a politician, just a politician.
Yeah, more or less. Noah Goop says your locals notification says 2 p.m. Just a heads up. Oh, is that right? Is Jake fired? Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you're telling me? Well, it was a good run. It says
was a good run.
It says 12 p.m. on Substack.
Good while it lasted.
Yeah, maybe it was maybe there was just a typo in the copy because it said 12 p.m. on the Substack notification. I wonder what it said on Patreon. But anyway, I'll let Jake know. Sorry about that. Thank you thank you for your attention to this matter. As we say. How was I supposed to recognize Clooney? He always
Make America
did me
great
from
again.
behind. Yes, make America great again. Stoop sign, Hakeem Jeffries, hindsight isn't 2020. If you don't look back, why try to learn things anyway? Thank you very much for that. All right, let's move on. All right, we got a fun one. It's Thursday, folks. We like to have some fun on Thursday. So the MAGA rift continues over Israel, Iran, and the neocons versus the non-neocons, whatever that means at this point. But it means a lot to Mark Levin and Tucker Carlson, that's for sure. So Rapid Response 47 tweets out this piece of video from Witkoff decrying the neocon elements within the administration pushing for war.
Con element believes that war is the only way to solve things. And the president believes that his force of personality, the way he is going to respond to situations, can bend people to do things in a much better way in the interest of the United States government. And I believe in that, too.
Okay, well, you know who took great offense to that is Mark Levin, the longtime radio host. By the way, neocon is a pejorative for Jew. Unbelievable. Who has ever said that? That is just completely from outer space.
They're trying to push. No, he's not the only one saying that. They're trying to push that idea into the mainstream so that they can't be criticized for their foreign policy.
Yeah, but I mean, like all of a sudden. No, I mean, Douglas Murray kind of hinted at that when Dave Smith brought up Paul Wolfowitz. He's like, whenever somebody brings up Wolfowitz, I wonder why they singled him out.
This is definitely something they're trying to inject into the conversation.
Right, exactly. So readers added context to Mark Levin's tweet. Neocon, short for neoconservative, is a term for a political philosophy focused on active foreign policy to spread liberal democracy. While many neocons have been Jewish, nowhere near all have been. In fact, the most influential ones have not been, like George Bush, Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney's as white as deviled eggs.
Yeah, right, exactly. And you see here, Mark Levin took a pretty bad ratio on that, 1.9K in the like column, 3.6K in the comment column, including some high-profile detractors. Mike Ben says, Mark, don't do this, man. You don't help anyone who cares about the same issues you do when you throw out this kind of lazy reductionist charge like this. The Hodge twin says, neocon got nothing to do with being Jewish. Not everything is anti-Semitic. Even one of his longtime fans, Wade Miller, says, I'm a longtime fan, but it's absolutely nonsense that neocon is a pejorative for Jew. I've been using that term for 30 years, and it's never been about Jews, and I don't know anyone who uses it that way in D.C. Don't be woke with this clear nonsense. Yes, they are, of course, the woke right. Now, Levin explained what he meant by this a little bit on his radio show. Says he wasn't attacking Steve Witkoff, but was counterpunching, and then doubles down on the idea that neocon means Jew. So here's Mark Levin's radio show.
Levin, who Trump named to the Homeland Security Department's advisory board, attacking Witkoff is yet another example. I'm not attacking anybody. I'm laying out the facts. Growing divide in the GOP between the more isolationist, anti-interventionist wing of the party, led largely by the likes of Vice President J.D. Vance, and the more classic hawkish GOP position on foreign policy. Look, ladies and gentlemen, for me, it's not about personalities. It's not. It's not. It's just not.
It's just that I have the charisma of the troll in the Three Billy Goats Gruff, and so everything I say comes off as bitter and angry. Yes. Imagine listening to this guy for 15 hours a week.
And I'm a counterpuncher, just like the president. I didn't attack Steve Witkoff, but if he's going to paint with this broad brush about neocons, pejorative and stuff of that sort, I'm going to respond.
Isn't
because in
Witkoff
part they're talking
Jewish?
about me, and I'm not going to put up with
Yeah, Witkoff is Jewish. Of course he's Jewish.
What the fuck is he talking about?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane.
My position is peace through strength, not peace through.
No. Peace through bombing is not peace through strength. Okay, bombing Yemen is not peace through strength. That's not peace. You're bombing them, right? Bombing Iran is not peace through strength. It's amazing how they have really, really perverted that term. Yeah, peace through strength means bombing people into submission. No, that's not peace. That's not peace.
Silly mouth. I still have great faith that President Trump's going to have a great deal. Not because of Witkoff or anybody else, because of President Trump. So we don't have any disagreement there. But this neocon talk, this Jew talk, especially coming from a Jew, is unacceptable to me. Period. This warmonger talk, when the warmongers are the Iranians and the Qataris and the Saudi Arabians and the Hamasians who've attacked us.
Mm-hmm.
That's on them. That's not on us.
Okay, very good. So,
it's just amazing because the logic, the formulations of these people is wokeness. I mean, it truly is the woke right. The idea, the way, oh my God, it drives me crazy. The way they would try to rule a conversation out of bounds by changing the underlying meaning of a word. That's exactly what they're doing. And well, you can't talk about it because now it's you're anti-Semitic if you say it. I mean, it's the wokest shit you could imagine that they've been screaming about for years, and they've just embraced the same exact logic. It's amazing.
oh yeah, no, it's the exact same tactic. The exact same tactic.
Well, and it's the same underlying belief. I say, like, what's come to be defined as woke, you call it critical theory. It's very religious because you cannot get out of their inquisitions because it assumes original sin.
Right.
It assumes sin in the human heart. If you deny it, it's proof of your guilt, just like an inquisition, right? The more you deny it, the more sin you have inside you. So everyone's anti-Semitic.
Right. So Tucker Carlson reacted to this. Now, he had Dave Smith on his show, and Mark Levin came up. So we'll see some of Levin's tweets that Tucker responds to, which Levin really did not take kindly to.
Pejorative for Jew. Neocon is a pejorative for Jew. Unbelievable. And this is in response to Witkoff saying, quote, the neocon element believes that war is the only way to solve things. So you have Mark Levin calling Steve Witkoff an anti-Semite.
Right. And again,
we've reached peak crate. I mean, I think Witkoff is Jewish, right?
Again, but it's I don't even know. But it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
He's American and he's on the side of peace, and so I'm for that guy.
Oh boy, Levin
neocon is a
did not like that. He did not like that. So now he goes off even more. Mark Levin went off on Tucker Carlson, called him a schmuck, and warned him, "Don't screw with me, you little bastard." His comments followed an episode of Tucker Carlson in which the guest Dave Smith said Levin had accused the Trump administration of anti-Semitism. Levin refers to Tucker Carlson as Chatsworth Osborne Jr. throughout his rant, a reference to Rush Limbaugh's nickname for Carlson. Yeah, was he paying tribute to Rush Limbaugh, or was he ripping off Rush Limbaugh? Because yes, Rush Limbaugh did refer to him as Chatsworth Osborne Jr., character from one of the 60s TV shows. I forget the name of it, but bow tie, nerdy hair, haha, very original, very cool. So let's take a listen to some of Levin's rant, which I edited for time because it was quite long.
Picks a fight with me. So a schmuck picks a fight with me. Doesn't call me. He's got this sidekick, sort of I don't even know who this guy Smith is. Or was his guest. He's not like an Ed McMahon figure or something. I don't know why all these big-time smart hosts always have to have a sidekick or somebody or a guest.
He literally has an interview show.
I guess that's what they need. They need a guest, unlike me. Unlike me.
I guess just because I adjusted to the fact that I have such a repulsive personality, I couldn't get someone to come on my show.
Yeah.
Means I must just be super talented. I can carry it myself.
I have such tremendous charisma, and I'm so entertaining that people just tune into this for 15 hours a week to hear me by myself rant like this with no humor, no irony, no self-awareness, no real insight. That's how good I am.
I'm no fan of the envoy.
Meaning Witkoff.
I
I'm no
never
fan of
called him
Witkoff.
a traitor. I know how to say traitor, and I never called him an anti-Semite. And this is really precious.
Well, you did, though.
You did.
You did.
You said neocon's a pejorative for Jew. Like, what does that mean? Like, you're clearly calling him anti-Semitic, obviously.
Friend Chatsworth Osborne Jr. was brought in a conga line. A conga line. The miscreants, malcontents, and worse. In my opinion. And I say this as a red-blooded American.
He always reverts to that.
And a lot of people are getting sick and tired of this game. They're getting turned off by this.
No one is getting to, this is what I mean. Like, they're panicking because their faction of the conservative movement is fading into obscurity thanks in large part to this issue. Like, he keeps acting as if he speaks for the average Joe. You clearly don't. The numbers clearly indicate that. You're on terrestrial radio. The market's a little different. There's a lot more gatekeeping there than there is in the podcast world. But out here in the Wild West of podcasting, it's very clear. The anti-Israel right is enjoying huge numbers, and the pro-Israel right is going bankrupt. That's what's happening. So this idea
Literally,
that you speak for the
Daily
average
Wire,
person,
the flagship outlet of Zionist conservatism, is going bankrupt while everyone else is making a fortune in the space.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Candace Owens is selling body cream left and right or whatever the hell her sponsorship is, and here you are on terrestrial radio.
There's not even sell a crypto, Trump meme coin, whatever the fuck he does.
Yeah, exactly.
The American people do not want the Islamo-Nazi regime in Iran to get a nuclear weapon. They don't want them to have missile technology where they can put a nuclear warhead on an intercontinental ballistic missile and hit the United States. And the fact that they don't want that doesn't make them a warmonger, a neocon, or anything else.
So if you watched the Misty Winston show last night, or if you didn't, we put out a clip this morning. Kyle Anzalone from antiwar.com, who was her guest, put out an article citing a poll that said 70% of the American people want a nuclear deal with Iran, meaning, of course, they don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, but they do want them to pursue a civil nuclear program if that avoids a war. That is what most people want. Most people say, yes, they should be able to develop nuclear capacity, not weapons capacity, but nuclear capacity. And in exchange for that, we should call a truce and simmer things down. And what his faction, what Levin's faction of the Republican Party and the conservative movement say is, no, they should not be allowed to pursue that technology at all because that will inevitably lead to a bomb. That is completely out of step with the vast majority of the American people. The vast majority of the American people say they should be allowed to pursue a civil nuclear program and we should have peace. So again, this is just completely talking out of his ass.
It makes them patriotic Americans. That's number one. Number two, I am hoping, you are hoping, that Donald Trump figures out some kind of deal that nobody else has figured out yet, but he's capable of it, to stop them, short of war. But many of us are skeptical. Why? Because we have a brain. Because we know the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran is a terrorist regime that has violated every piece of paper it's ever signed. That's why we're at the 11th hour. That's why Donald Trump's having to deal with it. We know what terrorism means as much as we know what neocon means. Now, people use neocon, many people, innocently. They don't know what it means. He knows what it means.
Right.
And my point to our envoy was, why are you using a word like that? Because you don't even know what it means.
I thought you just said he does know what it means.
I thought you just said he knows what it means.
Yeah, you're talking about that. I understand you got to improvise and you're on for 3 hours and you run out of things to say, but you got to keep a little bit better track of things if you're going to be picking fights like this.
And so the point was to let him know. that it's a pejorative. What it's a pejorative for, and it's unbelievable that he spews it. And he'll keep spewing it, and others will too. But I don't have to pretend I'm Helen Keller, that I don't see and I don't hear, and neither do you. And neither do you. And there's a whole pattern over there with Chatsworth Osborne Jr. A whole pattern. Now, he's free to do what he wants. I believe in free speech. Go ahead, buy a subscription. Do whatever you want. It's perfectly fine by me. But don't screw with me, you little bastard, by twisting my words.
Oh, my God. All Tucker did was read your tweet.
He's a tough guy over there.
He's a big, tough guy. I mean, all Tucker did was read your tweet. Here's the video once again, the first few seconds.
As a pejorative for Jew. Unbelievable.
He literally just read what you said. Because you are so and this is you're right. This is the exact woke left tactic being adopted by now what we call the woke.
Yep.
Right. They know they're losing, and so they have to shut down the conversation with accusations of some sort of bigotry or bias. That's exactly what that is. That's exactly what that is.
Right. And that is a classic tactic where they'll, if a word is hurting them, rule the word out of bounds. They tried to do that with woke, and they still do. But there was at one point a real full court press to claim that the term woke was racist and sexist and homophobic. The term itself was that to get you to stop using it. There's exactly that logic. Yep, no, neocon's anti-Semitic. Now we got to get neocon out of the conversation. Like, what do you think? Even if you successfully do that, you think you'll kill the idea of what that is? People will just adopt another word. Like, what's the
They'll
point?
just find something else. Exactly. Michael Tracy wrote an article saying, you know what? Maybe neocon doesn't mean anything anymore, because if you back Israel, the Israeli agenda is the neocon agenda, which is something pointed out by the judge and the jury to any intra-right feud. Alex Jones weighs in on this. Here we go.
To hear it.
He always comes in hot. Doesn't waste any time. Guy goes from 0 to 100 in a quarter of a second. That's how he makes the big bucks.
In acting, one of the rules is not to come in really high.
Right.
Because then, you're not going to have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
Jones can do that because he actually has a few other gears above that.
Right. Jones's amp goes to 11, as they say.
It goes to 11.
This one goes to 11.
He can come in at 10 because he has the capacity to go to 11.
That's right.
So I don't want to hear it. I speak for the Christians and Jews of America, as I played last hour. I'm Mark Levin, and we don't stand with Al-Qaeda. Well, the hell you don't. Your boss, Netanyahu, literally runs it. He's the last standing neocon with any power.
Now, that is actually a good point. That, yes, Benjamin Netanyahu is, of course, a neocon. Benjamin Netanyahu embodies the neocon foreign policy agenda that dates back in, modern parlance anyway, to the post 9/11 years, which was halfway through Netanyahu's tenure as a central figure in Israeli politics. He started representing them at the UN in 1984. So, yes, Netanyahu is a neocon. So if you back Netanyahu, you are falling in line behind the neocons, whether you call yourself that or not. It's actually a good point by Alex there. All right.
He's the last standing neocon with any power. So I don't want to hear it. Stop talking to me like I'm culturally and historically and military illiterate. I'm not, Mark. And Trump is actually pro-Israel. And he understands that Iran is going to blow it off the map, and then Israel's going to blow them off the map, and then Pakistan and India are going to have a nuclear war, and all the war games are all dead, you dumb son of a bitch! What the fuck's your problem? You fucking megalomaniac fuckheads! And that's what Trump's told Netanyahu, a little nicer than that, but not much more, I was told.
A little nicer than that.
I mean, we're rational, sane men.
Yes, you are rational.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's definitely how you read.
That definitely comes through in that. Yeah. What's the thumbnail for this video? That or this? What do you think? It's always tough. Always tough. Alex always gives you so many options. He gives you so much to work with. You can only choose one.
See now I'm sure we're more sensitive to this because we do this for a living. I don't understand. I could get watching Alex Jones as like campy humor, like campy fun,
yeah.
like very entertaining. I don't get people who don't understand that this is a performance.
Right.
Of course it's a performance. Nobody acts like that. Who
He
acts
argued
like
in court it was a performance. Yeah.
Of course it's a performance. Like, how do you watch this and not realize it's a performance?
Yeah.
War! In all the war games, we're all dead, you dumb son of a bitch! What the fuck's your problem? You fucking megalomaniac! Fuckheads!
That's what Trump said.
Trump's told
Nicer than
Netanyahu
that.
a little nicer than that, but not much more, I was told.
A little nicer than that, but not much
we're
more.
Rational, sane men.
He should have sent Alex Jones to negotiate. That would have been a good negotiation. Yeah, that would have gone great. I would love to see that. I would love to see that. So look, this issue.
I'm surprised he's not in the cabinet.
Yeah, he should be in the cabinet. This issue is eating them alive. This issue is just eating the conservative movement from within, which is a positive. Obviously. You know, because this genocide started under Biden, we saw immediately the rift that it caused on the left, because the Democrats had power and there were some on the left who, you know, believed in lesser evilism and thought we needed to support the Democratic ticket despite this, and some took a hard line. We didn't really see the rift on the right because for a while there, the Republicans kind of set this aside. Hey, we have an election to win. We'll talk about it later. Well, guess what? Later is here. Later is now. And we said this between Trump's victory and Inauguration Day. It's not going to be long before it becomes untenable to just ignore this and pretend this issue isn't there. This debate is going to have to play out in the conservative movement, and now it is. And it's pretty clear which side is winning at the grassroots.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, the government is not beholden to the grassroots. This is an oligarchy, and so you still have that major obstacle there. But the fact that Trump feels that tension and is trying to maneuver it in a way is enough to make guys like Mark Levin fucking explode, because they're not used to that. They're not used to that. And so this is causing a lot of damage.
Well, the fact that the United States made a deal with Hamas without going through Israel, that made heads explode on that side. And it really tells you what the game is. Israel is supposed to have total control and completely dictate American foreign policy in regards to Israel. And predictably, they overplayed their hand to the point that they're getting more and more backlash from the MAGA side of the aisle. You know, now you're having Marjorie Taylor Greene come out against it. Right. The most prominent and influential of the podcast hosts and the YouTube hosts in that space are all anti-Zionist, if not pro-Palestine. You can feel, particularly over the last few weeks, you can feel a palpable shift in the momentum against Israel. And they're not going to go down without ranting and raving like the maniacs that they are.
Yes.
Now, the question is, does the Trump administration turn around now and maybe, you know, let these students go to school?
Right. Well, yeah.
Knock it off with the deportations.
Exactly. And this is the point that we got into last time. Like, look, if you're going to do this, if you're going to shake things up a bit, you have to bring that policy back home. You can't be committing these egregious civil liberties infractions here, especially if it doesn't even, like, I mean, you shouldn't do it under any circumstances, but it's especially insulting the fact that you are starting to, I don't even want to give them enough credit to say find a backbone, because let's see what happens, right? Like, let's not buy into, oh, he said he's going to do this, right?
The smart money is never on Trump not taking Miriam Adelson's 15-inch strap-on.
Exactly. So I don't want to even go as far as to say that. I don't think that would be responsible. But the fact that there is some tension here, the fact that you are bypassing Israel at all, means that this is open for debate, which means your own people have a right to debate it without being hassled and shaken down and questioned and detained or deported. I mean, that has to change. That has to change. And the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene was able to, with the help of a few of her colleagues, Massey, a couple others, that Anna Paulina, whatever her name is, get that boycott bill spiked, that's a good sign, because that's a civil liberties issue.
Right.
So that has to be a major focus of this. It's not enough to, play out the geopolitics, you have to ease up on your own people. You have an obligation to uphold the First Amendment. And we cannot lose sight of that no matter what. Okay. Let's see. J.E. Turner. The sad thing is there's a kernel of truth to what Murray said about experts. A lot of the alternate media doesn't actually know what they're talking about. No, there certainly is, and we made that point. We just think part of the reason why crackpots have been taken seriously is because experts like Douglas Murray have been so wrong. I mean, Murray is the last person to prosecute that argument. But yeah, no, we're not saying there's no kernel of truth there. We've made that point, I think, every time we covered it.
See our Daryl Cooper sextology.
Yeah, right, exactly. Our Daryl Cooper box set.
Yes.
The People
Just in time for Christmas.
Just in time for, we should sell that for Christmas. We should print those on DVDs. A limited edition, 50 copies only. Daryl Cooper box set. The People of Infinite, Carville, that hog boy stuck a Carolina ghost pepper up my ass. The future of his party, I'll tell you what. LMAO, love you guys. Jeep rockin', keep rockin'. Thank you very much for that. Very kind of you to say. Big Papa Mau Mau, thanks for the $20 on YouTube. That's kind of you. Says, one of Cronenberg's early movies called Shivers, They Came From Within has a fascinating concept that I don't think you can make into a movie today about a parasitic STD that turns people into an nymphomaniac.
I've seen it.
I've never seen that one. Never seen that one.
Never saw that?
No.
That's his first movie, right?
Was that his first one? I'm not sure. It was an early one. The Ratioing says, no, I'm saying you should consider supporting Mamdani. Okay, yeah, the way you worded it, it said, I request you reconsider your support for Mamdani.
Oh, we should. Well, yeah. I guess you got our take either way.
Just give his father's books a shot. He's a revolutionary, and if the apple doesn't fall from the tree, who knows? Look, Mamdani strikes me the same way he strikes Russell. It's not personal bitterness. I'm not keen to interview a politician, but we did reach out. We have a big New York audience. Blakely reached out. She has a big New York audience. He does not follow up with people.
You don't see him on any of the left.
He's not working the beat, so that's
and what
not
does that tell you about what his real intentions are?
And also,
he was very evasive when I asked him a couple questions.
Yeah,
that guy's full of shit.
Yeah, and also I will just have to say, regardless, part of why we don't engage in Democratic primary politics is because Andrew Cuomo is going to win that primary. He's going to win that primary. They just put out a big poll that, because it's ranked choice and the loser support goes to this, so there can be multiple rounds. Even in the final round where Mamdani does the best out of the non-Cuomo candidates, he still loses by 20. The election's a month away. Look, the New Yorkers, I'm telling you, the Trump factor is dominating that primary. They're afraid. A big part of this, too, is, look, libs are clout chasers. They are star fuckers. They like the big name, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, they're afraid. I'm telling you right now, a lot of New Yorkers are afraid that if they elect a guy named Zohran Mamdani, that Trump is going to come after that city because it's run by this brown mayor with a Muslim name, and they're going to make New York, they're going to turn New York into what they said about San Francisco. Like New York will be the new San Francisco or the new Chicago. They don't want that. They don't want that. The New Yorkers are not up for that. It's a Rockefeller Republican town. They want a big, tough asshole who's going to stand up to Donald Trump, and that's Andrew Cuomo. He's going to win. I'm telling you. I think it's a waste of time to get involved with Mamdani, even if we didn't have those reservations. Matrix Manipulator says, something inside me just knew Levin would kvetch. Yes, indeed. Zilla Gorilla, in fairness to Biden, who I hate, you walk into any Ace Hardware and tell me you don't see 10 guys that look like Clooney. There you go. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Goo81 says, I think this is Putin's way of also giving a big middle finger to Erdogan as he backstabbed Russia regarding Azov prisoners in Syria. So he is showing, I feel, to disappoint Turkey intentionally. That could certainly be the case as well. It comes down to, Judy Denmark says, whether you want fascism on top of the usual corruption. I am forced to vote Democrat because Trump wants to eliminate dual citizenship and any semblance of freedom of speech. Damn. Well, you're not alone.
Will that include all the members of Congress who have Israeli citizenship?
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, but you are not alone in that. I don't like to engage duopoly politics because it's just not our beat at this point. I think the Democratic Party is absolutely hopeless. But from an analysis standpoint, it's undeniable that millions of people feel the way you feel. That's what explains these special election results. And around the world, that's what explains the Canada results, the German results, and the Australia results. So you are not alone in that. All right, let's move on. What do we got? Oh, the Medicaid hearings.
Fun, fun, fun. Free ice cream. They gave out free ice cream at those hearings.
Yeah.
All right. So the big, beautiful bill is taking shape. And as everybody said, given the level of tax cuts that Trump wants, well, there's really no way to get that except if you go after Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, or the Pentagon. Now, we know they're not going to go after the Pentagon, so guess what they're going after. But some Republicans like Josh Hawley know that much of their base actually relies on Medicaid and that it may be a disastrous move politically.
No one's going to get 100% of what we want.
House Speaker Mike Johnson today working to solve Republican in-party fighting.
I think we'll get everybody to yes.
As their proposed cuts to Medicaid divide the party. Late Sunday, Johnson unveiling their plan to cut hundreds of billions of dollars to Medicaid, fueling concerns it would leave millions of low-income and disabled Americans without care.
I continue to maintain my position. We should not be cutting Medicaid benefits.
Republican Senator Josh Hawley yesterday with an op-ed in the New York Times writing, if Congress cuts funding for Medicaid benefits, Missouri workers and their children will lose their health care and hospitals will close. It's that simple, and that pattern will replicate in states across the country.
We are struggling with rural health care coverage. And, Republicans, we need to be making that better, not worse.
Protesters today blocking the doors to one of the hearings on Capitol Hill where members of Congress dissect the proposed cuts, a critical piece of the big, beautiful bill President Trump has been asking for to fund his agenda.
With the one big, beautiful bill, we can ignite the second Trump economic boom and improve the lives of millions of our neighbors back home.
If the cuts are approved, it would go against what Trump said back in February.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. Okay? This will not be read my lips. It won't be read my lips anymore. We're not going to touch it.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says the cuts would slash Medicaid more than ever before.
It's cruel. It's heartbreaking. Senate Democrats will continue to expose this devastating plan and fight for American families.
The process to approve a funding bill is still in the early stages. It has to be approved in the House, then the Senate before being signed by President Trump. Perry Russum, ABC News, Washington.
The guy looks like Chatsworth Osborne Jr. too.
Yes. Listen. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. It's really like the frog in the pot of boiling water. This country got so stupid over time that at this point, people are just accepting the level of idiocracy that we're at now. The big, beautiful bill. They're debating the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah.
Do you understand how stupid as a country you have to be that you're speaking in these third grader terms about extremely significant legislation that will impact millions of lives? The big, beautiful bill. Wow. Okay. So a little more detail on what's in the big, beautiful bill. Republicans are seeking to extend Mr. Trump's 2017 tax cut. That's what it's all about, baby. And temporarily enact his campaign pledges not to tax tips or overtime pay. They want to partly offset the roughly $3.8 trillion cost of those tax measures, as well as plans to increase spending on the military and immigration enforcement by making cuts to Medicaid, food stamps, and subsidies for clean energy. The House Energy and Commerce Committee, whose portion of the bill includes major funding cuts and policy changes to Medicaid, plowed ahead through the night. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that the committee's proposed changes, which are concentrated on healthcare programs, would save more than $900 billion over the next decade. And I believe the tax cuts are last we looked at it, I think it was $771 billion most of which go to the upper 68% income distribution. Much of the discussion centered on work requirements that the bill would impose on adult Medicaid beneficiaries without children, the centerpiece of the Republican proposal. The policy is expected to push millions of Americans off the program and achieve significant spending reductions. Just correction, it was 68% goes to the top 20% of income distribution. Under the provision, Medicaid beneficiaries would need to submit paperwork every month showing that they worked at least 80 hours or qualified for an exception. Many of the details of the work requirement in the bill were modeled on a program in Georgia, which has resulted in low enrollment and high administrative costs. Studies suggest that most Medicaid beneficiaries who would be subject to the new rules already work, and previous state experiments with work requirements nevertheless resulted in large coverage losses. Well, that's the point. That's the point. Because most people, when they hear work requirements for able-bodied people, they're for it. But the purpose of it is they know in the administration, you wind up with millions of people, because they've already tested it in Georgia. You wind up with millions of people, if you're talking about applying this nationally, who are going to lose coverage who are qualified for it. You're adding an extra barrier. You're adding an extra layer of obstacles to getting that coverage. That's the whole point of the policy.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so this is AOC, which, hey, man, I don't want to hear anything from people who are like, you know what? I don't like Steve Bannon, but he has a point here. I don't want to hear shit. She has a point here, okay? So this is what she had to say.
And the math is not adding up. They're trying to convince people that they are cutting millions of undocumented people from payroll, from Medicare, acting as though this is what's going to save it. Even if you believe everything that Republicans have said today, they are identifying 1 million, their claim, which I dispute, but if you believe them, their claim is that 1 million undocumented people are on Medicaid. So why are they trying to cut 13.7 million Americans off their health care? By the Republicans' own Energy and Commerce tweet this morning, their claim is 7.6 million people are somehow ineligible for health care. So why are they cutting 13.7 million Americans off their health care? They've asked us to read this bill, and we have. This bill bans the people that they kick off of Medicaid from even buying their own insurance from the Affordable Care Act exchange. So once you are kicked off Medicaid, you then can't even buy your own health insurance. It increases costs for people who they deem eligible and who are low income and forces them to pay even more. And if you have a private insurer, don't worry, you're getting screwed over too, because your healthcare premiums are going to skyrocket from the disaster that is happening from this bill.
Okay, so the point she's making there is part of how they estimate costs is how much money is coming in. So potentially, if you had a policy like this, these companies that post ACA and Medicaid expansion have set their rates based on getting that money coming in from the government. If they're no longer getting that money from the government, they're going to increase the rates. So that's what she means about it affecting people with private insurance. Now, the provision that she's talking about there, and to be fair, I haven't had time to look into this, but given other absolutely deranged and almost arbitrarily cruel policies this administration has championed, it tracks the idea that once you kick them off Medicaid, they can't go to ACA. That is insane. So you're just basically going to put people in a position where they absolutely financially cannot afford health care.
Right. Yep.
And so where do they go if they can't go on Medicaid? They just die in the streets? Is that the plan? And this is why, again, I've been saying for a while, man, they want us dead. They want us dead. They know the AI and the robots are coming. They don't need as many of us anymore. So here's some of the protest. We saw a little bit of that in the early coverage. Now, the reason people like Josh Hawley are pushing back on this is because they know this is what every GOP town hall is going to look like if they go ahead with this, particularly because Medicaid is relied on by rural voters disproportionately. So this was inside the room.
The committee will come to order. The chair will advise the audience that disruption of a congressional business is a violation of law and is a criminal offense. Please come to order.
We will find you.
We will find you.
We will find you. So somebody who didn't care about that was Ben Cohen, co-founder of Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream. He went all Americone Dream on RFK's ass right in the middle of his testimony.
Members of the audience are reminded disruptions will not be permitted while the committee conducts its business. Capitol Police are asked to remove the individuals from the hearing room.
Fish food for the win. That's what I tweeted.
Ben, why are you getting arrested?
Move down the hallway. If you stop, you will be arrested.
Poor kids in Gaza by buying bombs and pays for it by kicking kids off Medicaid in the U.S.
Ben, what are you calling for the Congress and senators to do for Gaza?
They need to let food into Gaza. They need to let food to starving kids. Congress is paying to bomb poor kids in Gaza and paying for it by kicking poor kids off Medicaid in the U.S.
Yep. And is this a popular policy? Not at all. Not at all. Every poll that's been done, spending cuts to Medicaid is deeply unpopular. 76% all adults, 95% Dems, 79% independents. And remember, elections are won and lost on the independents.
Yeah.
Even the GOP, 55% of people are against it. They are so determined to continue to pursue the zombie theory of Reaganomics, which has failed and failed and failed again to deliver this prosperity, this Lafleur curve that it was supposed to deliver, where you stimulate the economy so much with the tax cuts that it makes up for the loss in revenue because you have more people earning and paying into the taxes. It doesn't work, has never worked. The application of this theory is part of why we have such a tremendous budget deficit. It is the core reason why there has been a level of exploding wealth inequality that's causing increasing social instability, the decay of our infrastructure, the collapse of our society, of our civic society, of our ability to fund the basic needs of the poor. All goes back to decisions that, they started to make under Reagan. And whether Democrat or Republican, they will not let this idea go. Obama was going to negotiate away Social Security cuts with the Republicans. He tried to do a big, grand bargain with them. Clinton was looking at doing that. Joe Biden talked very fondly about the idea of cutting Social Security. This neoliberal theory is just the concept that will not die. This idea that they are so determined to give tax cuts to rich people. Now, Trump is a little more politically astute, so he's throwing in tips. How many people work for tips? I mean, some people, I've worked for tips. I'm not saying it's not relevant to you if you work for tips. How many people work for tips? How much money do you think that is? And look, that's a beautiful scam for them. Most people who make a lot of money in tips don't pay the taxes.
Right. They don't
pay the taxes. Exactly. So it doesn't even affect the government, but you get to pretend that you're standing up for the working people. Exactly. Not taxing overtime. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of money that will go to the upper 20% of society under these proposed tax cuts. You're talking about ripping the whole society apart just to give tax cuts to people who do not need tax cuts. Will this kill them in the midterms? I mean, theoretically, I'm not confident given who the opposition is.
I think it will, and at this rate, we never predict. You can't lock in a
Also,
prediction.
one thing before you go, let me interject. I know the work requirement from the article is not supposed to kick in until 2029.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that issues like this are what doom you, especially in midterms where it's not a battle of personalities, right? It's more a referendum on the in party, and this is just devastating. Now, I don't think this is going to go through, but we will see. We will see if something like this goes through. Scott Jennings, CNN panelist, always, he has become somewhat famous for popularizing the term 80-20. Oh, you're on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. Well, guess what? That looks like an 80-20 issue to me.
Yeah.
All adults,
Yeah.
76%. Independents, 79%. That, you're right. That is where elections are won and lost.
Right.
If independents are opposed to you 4-1 on an issue so existential as your access to medicine. This is not 80-20 on women's sports where a good percentage who agree with you are going to prioritize another issue over that. This is as existential as it gets.
Right.
You can't be this brutal and not pay a consequence. I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I never regretted not voting for her in 2016. But I remember in 2017, the day they were taking the Obamacare repeal vote in the Senate, I was on Obamacare at the time. My wife was at the time. We both were working an event that day, and we woke up thinking, better have a good show. This was a wholesale show where you're supposed to make enough money to fill orders for the next 6 months. We're like, this better be a good day because by the end of the day, we're not going to have healthcare anymore. That's what we just assumed.
Right.
And then it came across my phone that John McCain gave the thumbs down, and oh, what a sigh of relief that was. Well, guess what happened? A year later, the Democrats took the House pretty convincingly. The Senate map was not in their favor that year, so they actually lost ground in the Senate because a lot of red states happened to be up for re-election, and there just wasn't the room for Democrats to overtake them. But in the House, yeah, they took a drubbing in the House because that kind of shit scares people. When you create an emergency situation, you make it very easy for the out party to win by default, which is what the Democrats are going to have to do because they suck. They can't win on the merits. They have to win by default. Shit like this makes it super easy for them to do that. You can't threaten to strip people of health care. Not only strip people of the health care they have, but make the fallback inaccessible, right? Because they can't go on the ACA either. So what the hell are they supposed to do? You're making it very easy for them to say, you know what? I'm voting against you by default. No questions asked.
It's true. And it's just amazing. Rich people, man, they're really hurting.
Right.
They're really hurt. They're not winning enough in the system the way it's currently set up.
Right.
You need to give them more money. This is what I mean.
$3.7 trillion.
It's a zombie idea. Trickle-down economics is a zombie idea. It's a religion. It doesn't even make any sense on its own terms at this point. How much more money do these people need to be able to invest? They don't have that. I mean, that's the theory behind it. It's bullshit, but that's the theory. They don't have enough money to invest now. You need more tax cuts. They can't They can't afford yachts. They can't afford houses. What can they not afford when you have people approaching $1 trillion in wealth? What can they not afford?
Yeah. Exactly. 3.7 trillion more. This is what all of this is in service of. The Medicaid cuts, the tariffs, all of this turmoil is so that they can give a tax cut to the rich. That's what it's all about.
You don't need the money, and politically, it's poison. This is what I mean. It's just ever since Reagan laid out this Milton Friedman theory, they're just obsessed with it to the point that it is a religion. They just won't even think about whether this makes sense. And really, if you want to find a rational motive behind it, Warren Buffett said it. Sure, there's a class war, and my side's winning it. It's a class war. Why do you cut services this way and give more money to rich people? It's to devastate and humiliate the poor. It's to assert your aristocratic dominance over the rest of society. That's the impulse behind it.
Exactly. We are at 760 likes. and 2,100 strong in the YouTube chat. Good crowd for a Thursday. Excellent to see you all. All right. We're going to move right on along after some super chats here. 9 Signs says, why do Americans call Democrats the left when there's not a single left-winger among them, as they are all centrist, center-right liberals, even Bernie? Well, that's right. That's the Overton window. Barbara Howard, thanks for the $10. Oh, my God, the very best metaphor ever. Troll under the bridge and the 3 Billy Goats gruff. So fitting and yet so touching. Solidarity with all parents of young kids. Pun intended. What was the pun? I didn't catch the pun. It must have been a good pun because I didn't get it. Solidarity. Oh, kids, goats. Kids, kid, goat, kid, person. Got it. Got it. RBGH fam, thanks for the $5. What happens when the corporate liberals and corporate conservatives combine in the Democratic Party? Can they just change their name to neo-corporatist? They could, and that has been the Democratic Party's goal. Like, that's what the Democrats are trying to do, right? The Republicans won't take it. The Republicans, every time the Democrats try that, the Republicans take that as license to go further to the right, right?
Yeah.
That's how you get to, okay, Toni Morrison is banned, right? Because they don't take the deal. But that's what the Democrats want to do. That's what Biden's whole campaign was. You had Kamala Harris parading around Michigan with Liz Cheney in the last month. That's exactly what they're trying to do. GDNPB, Chatworth Osborne, played by Stephen Frankel, is a pejorative for whitey, and people are sick of it, Mark. Yes, there you go. Thank you. Good one. Boys, make that Alex Jones rant a sound drop or two. Yeah, I thought about that. Yeah, we should probably get that on the board in some fashion. There are a couple of gems there we could use. Putin doesn't want to meet with 33 enemy nations at NATO. GU81, also based on the blackouts in Turkey, the anti-Erdogan protests are still ongoing, and the imprisoned Istanbul mayor has fled Turkey. Which one of you dirtbags wants this dollar for their G-string? Thank you, Hillary Hinton. If blasting YMCA through concert speakers in Mecca doesn't bring on the apocalypse, introducing deep dish pizza to Vatican City certainly will. Good one, Abiding. That was a two-part joke.
A good one.
A double-pronged joke. I like that. It's not easy. The two-pronged punchline is not easy. You pulled it off. Congratulations. DNC chair name is Malcolm Kenyatta. Sounds foreign and terroristy. No, he's not the chair. The chair is the big white guy. What's his name?
Yeah, that's Ken Martin.
Yeah, Ken Martin, something like that. Yeah, but no, Kenyatta's one of them. He's one of the underlings that I guess is being shown.
I'm actually I'm going to be featuring him heavily at my Slaughtered Hog segment.
There you go. All right. George says, guys, take it from a so-called crazy person. Watching Alex Jones reminds me convincingly of how sane we are as simultaneously priceless and reaffirming. Really felt it. Thank you, George. Appreciate that. And thanks again for gifting all of those subscriptions. It's very kind of you. Derek X say, enjoy the Kool-Aid, folks. America is one big Jonestown. That's right. That is what it feels like. That's a very good way of describing it. All right, folks, we're going to move right along. So the Medicaid hearings got most of the headlines yesterday, but not all of the headlines. So to set this up, we just want to take a very, very brief trip down memory lane. Remember when Donald Trump held this picture up of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's fingers with the clearly photoshopped MS-13 above the tattoos, marijuana leaf, smile, the cross, and the skull. Now, obviously, these were put there as a key to try and signify what those tattoos meant as symbols. They were not meant to be taken literally as being on his hands. And by the way, it's been recently going around online, credibly, I feel. Some tattoo artists have been posting on social media that actually what those symbols mean is smoke weed to get high, praise God till you die.
That makes sense.
Marijuana, smile,
makes a lot more
cross.
sense than MS-13.
Yeah. Now, can we verify that? No, but it makes actually a hell of a lot more sense than MS-13 since A, MS-13 gang members typically have MS-13 on their bodies. They're not subtle about it. And B, the cross and the skull never made sense. Like marijuana, smile, okay. If you're going to be cryptic, okay. The cross and the skull never made sense that would be 13. But just to give you a sort of humorous recap, Trump so incredibly, and seemingly sincerely believed that those were not photoshopped. So here is a little short we made of our live reaction to this train wreck segment on ABC News.
Tattoo.
I agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop? Well,
Here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir. I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted.
Okay, so yeah, that was one of the cringiest things to watch. It was one of the most unbelievable pieces of video that I've ever seen. In the history of generating this kind of content.
We don't do the reaction thumbnails, but that was a case where we should have.
It could have.
You doing this on the thumbnail would have really sold that clip.
That's true. We should have. We should just take some stills of standard reactions that we can plug in. Well,
that's what they do.
Yeah, just have a stock. Yeah, book a photo session. All right. So what do you need? Well, I just need some reactions of me looking like this,
looking horrified.
Yeah, I need like 30. Yeah. So that was pretty unbelievable, but so is this. I mean, I have to say, this is extraordinary. So Secretary Duck Lips, Kristi Noem, was testifying yesterday at a lesser publicized hearing. But here she is being confronted with this photograph by Congressman Eric Swalwell, and she refuses to acknowledge that Trump brandished a doctored image of Abrego Garcia's tattoo. This is incredible.
You have an important job. I think you have one of the most important jobs in the cabinet. Thank you for doing it. I want you to have credibility and be taken seriously as you do the job. And so I want to put to rest this question about Mr. Garcia in this photo that the president posted on April 21. Madam Secretary, you agree that the letters MS and the number 13 in Times Roman numeral font, that they are doctored on this photo, right?
Congressman Abrego Garcia.
No, I'm just asking about this photo.
It wasn't based off of tattoos. It was based off an entire case.
And I'll accept that
case against him.
For the purpose of this question. You agree, though, that this is doctored. Is that right?
The same protocols that are
Madam
applied
Secretary,
to every
I want you to have
with
credibility,
law
and
enforcement.
I want you to be taken seriously. Is this doctored or is it not
Sir,
doctored?
I am taken quite seriously.
Is it
because
doctored
I
or not
approach my job
doctored?
with the importance that the president has given me to do
I understand.
my job.
Is it doctored or not
Something
doctored?
that's important to.
Funny how, Kristi Noem looks like a 22-year-old, but has the voice of an 82-year-old. She sounds like a little old lady. I take this very seriously.
I mean, she doesn't look like a 22-year-old. She looks like what she is, a middle-aged woman with a lot of lip fillers and Botox. And
I think she pulls it off. Yeah. But anyway, hey, we'll settle that a different time.
Remembers that every single time a case is built.
Madam Secretary, I have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. I have a bullshit detector. I'm just asking you, is this doctored or not doctored?
Sir, the protocols in the case built against
Can you
Abrego
answer the
Garcia
question?
were exactly the same.
Madam Secretary,
I don't have any knowledge as to that photo you're pointing to.
Okay, can you take
I don't, sir.
She has no knowledge of the photo that you're referring to. Really? No knowledge of that? You went down to
Never
CCON.
heard of it.
You went down to CCON and made a big show of these deportations. You are the Secretary of Homeland Security. And you have not seen this photo before? That is, of course, an unbelievably transparent lie.
Show her the photo. Walk her the photo down there. No, that one. Please take a look at this photo. It was tweeted by the president on April 21. It's been hanging out there for about a month.
So what is your point?
My question is, the numbers...
The point is the president showed doctored evidence and then refused to admit that it was doctored. Now, I have a feeling he is such a boomer that he sincerely believes that that is not a doctored image. But you're not a boomer. You have the social media savvy to get dolled up with a hair curler and 3 layers of makeup and pinkish purple lipstick before you tour a torture prison. So you're the kind of person who ought to be savvy enough to recognize Photoshop where it clearly exists. So will you answer the question? Let's see.
And the letter, MS-13, could you look at the photo, please? It's right in front of
Are
you.
you saying Abrego Garcia is not a wife beater?
No,
he's saying the evidence is doctored. The evidence that you are using to put a man in a torture prison, which thankfully, thanks to Chris Van Hollen, he's been moved out of the torture prison, but he's still in jail based on very shoddy doctored evidence. That's what this is about. That's what he's saying.
But he's not a criminal. He's not a human trafficker. And he's not a member of MS.
You vouched for Mr. Garcia when your team said, ma'am, you vouched for him when you said he was mistakenly deported. I didn't vouch for him.
I did not say
in that
he
photo.
should have been deported. Absolutely.
It's so telling that you won't look at the photo.
And we will not be bringing.
Was it doctored or not?
In staying here, if
can you look to your right at the photo in front of you? Madam Secretary, can you look to the right at the photo in front of you?
I have seen this photo as you.
You just said you were not familiar with the photo. Now you're saying you've seen the photo, and she refuses to even turn her head.
Well, I mean, that could be the Botox.
Held it behind your head.
Thank you. And the letters MS and the numbers 13, are those doctored or not?
Testimony today is on a doctored photo. You don't want to talk about the facts.
Okay,
the importance of our national security.
You acknowledge it was doctored.
To make sure that the United States is protected.
Madam Secretary, this is not a hard question. Are those doctored or not?
Sir,
is that actually on his hand or not?
This is unbelievable to me that you're focused.
It's unbelievable to me that you can't look at the photo and tell the American people.
I looked at the photo, but I don't have any knowledge as to this photo.
Okay, so it's been hanging out there for 4 weeks. You are one of the chief law enforcement officials in the country. What have you done to investigate whether the president misrepresented the reason that that person has been detained?
Sir,
have you done anything to try and figure out whether that was doctored or not?
The mission of the Department of Homeland Security is to secure our nation and to make sure that we're out there going after those that are the worst of the worst, the criminals, the bad actors. Abrego Garcia.
So the answer is you've done nothing to correct the president.
MS-13, a wife beater and a human trafficker that should never have been in this country to begin with.
So, Madam Secretary.
Okay, we did a segment, we've done several segments on the Abrego Garcia case, which, like the Mahmoud Khalil case, is indicative of just how crazed and sociopathic these people are, that they would condemn a person potentially to a life sentence in a torture prison in a foreign country, defy a unanimous Supreme Court ruling to facilitate his return, and then obfuscate and refuse to even, it's worse than obfuscation, refuse to engage on the question of whether or not he is there based on doctored evidence. What do you think these people will not do to you? This is why I don't have patience for people. Well, we got to give Trump credit on this. No. No. These are automatic fails. You lock a man in prison who's here on a green card for criticizing Israel. That's an automatic fail. I don't want to hear about all the good deeds you've done in other sectors. By the way, there aren't many. Okay? This is another automatic fail. You're locking a man in an overseas prison based on shoddy evidence, and you refuse to even engage on the question of whether or not that evidence is valid. That's an automatic fail. The evaluation of this administration begins and ends in moments like these. If you don't see this for what it is, your eyes are not open. So here's Dan Goldman. You have anything to add? Well, this is quick. Do you want to play this? And then we'll
just play that.
Okay, cool. All right, so here's Dan Goldman. Will you give Abrego Garcia the due process the Supreme Court has required you to give him?
Filibustering by gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him?
Abrego Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately,
so
sir, and he is not.
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0? 9-0 that he hasn't been treated appropriately. Why is your opinion better and have more authority than the Supreme Court?
Investigators, 2 judges, an immigration court that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that. This
no.
is investigators and law
that is
enforcement
you
officers.
making.
And that opinion was nullified by an order of stay. That was already litigated and found to be inconclusive. Now, if you have more conclusive evidence, bring him here, show it to him, and show it to a judge. And if you're right, you're right. This is not about protecting one man. This is about protecting everyone in this country by setting a precedent that due process will not be suspended.
That determination
against him. If you don't
the
trust
court has considered all that. The judge has considered all that, Madam Secretary. And if you would be quiet, because I'm reclaiming my time.
Unbelievable.
You are not following this court order. But let's focus on the court order, because this opinion also says that to facilitate, which the Supreme Court is requiring, is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to allow him to get due process?
Abrego Garcia is in his home country.
What
If he were to come
steps
back,
have
your
you taken?
If your continued advocacy for him were to...
I'm not advocating for him. I'm advocating for a court order, Madam Secretary. The court order says that you must take steps to follow the court order. You are here under oath. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia pursuant to this court order?
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process, and that's under the...
Audible groans at the suggestion that this is disheartening to your constituents. Audible groan. Why? Luckily, we have recent polling on this. No, actually, it is you, Kristi Noem, who is out of step with the constituency of this country. The case involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia, New York Times Siena poll, 52% disapprove. Only 31% approve of the handling of this case. More Americans say Trump should bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. than say he should not, by a very, very wide margin. 50% say he should be brought back, 22% unsure, only 28% say no, he should not be brought back. With independents, you're underwater by 27 points. Again, when you are losing this bad with independents, that's how you know you have lost the plot. Among Republicans, only 54% say he shouldn't be brought back. 17% say he should, 29% unsure. So it's almost a split within your own party. And even amongst people who think that, you know what, maybe he belongs in El Salvador, when you ask the question, hey, if the court orders him back, do you have an obligation to follow the court? Well, at that point, the numbers just become incredibly lopsided. 78% says Trump has an obligation to follow the court's ruling. 19% say he does not have an obligation to follow the court's ruling. However, when you reframe that and say, well, if the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, orders it, what are the numbers at that point? At that point, only 9% of the population feel that Donald Trump should defy a Supreme Court order. So it is not Dan Goldman who is out of step with the voters on this issue. It is Donald Trump and Kristi Noem who are out of step with the voters on this issue. To see someone in that position of power be so incorrigible at the mention of a clear abuse of the system is really chilling. It's really chilling. That is really amazing video.
These people shouldn't be able to run a card game, much less these large institutions that have such an enormous impact on people's lives. Like what kind of a psychopath takes joy in deporting somebody to a torture prison that they admitted was deported by mistake? Now, these people are relentless in staying on message, and that's what they're going to do. They are just going to keep saying, you're advocating for a terrorist, for a human trafficker, because the audience that they're speaking to is their core base. And, you know, we interact with them and encounter them quite frequently. Those are the ones who will say, you know, skeptically, so the Maryland man is just a good father, right? I mean, it's the Foxification, MSNBCification of politics, where you're just talking to a fanatical core, even if they don't represent most people, because that fanatical core, that's your base. Those are your voters. Those are your foot soldiers. That's your army. And you hope that through them, you can recruit more at election time. But really, who is this for? That's why they don't care about those polls. Why, you think they don't see those polls? They're not talking to the majority of the public. They're talking to this MAGA core.
Yeah, and in this case, they had the public on their side more broadly on this issue, on the question of immigration, border security, deportations, and now they don't. And the reason you don't is because you took the goodwill that people handed you and you abused it in such egregious fashion that now even the MAGA hardliners say, listen, if the Supreme Court rules a certain way, you have to abide by it. Only a third of the MAGA base says, no, fuck the Supreme Court. That's how you know you've really screwed yourself.
Well, and also, actually, when you look at broad polling on matters like Medicaid, like deportation, in spite of what you might think from the most visible parts of this conversation, most people are not deranged psychopaths nor unhinged identitarians who refuse to admit that there could be any issues with mass immigration that are not motivated by racism. Most people don't think like this. Most people are not like this. Our politics, I am increasingly of the belief, based on the evidence, our politics, our conversation, particularly derived from social media, it's an op, man. It's an op. I think you have intelligence services behind it who want to define the conversation in terms of you either believe Abrego Garcia is Scarface on steroids and we've been rescued from him, or you believe that there could be absolutely no motivation to have any skepticism about mass migration other than bigotry. And they pretend that that's the only conversation. And when you look at that polling number, most people are not that. Most people are reasonable if you just ask them straight out, well, do you think a Supreme Court order should be defied? No, most people don't.
Right. Exactly. All right, folks. Hey, if you like what we do here and you want to help us do more of it, you can do so by becoming a member. That's by far the best way to support this project. So you can go to dudissidents.com/Patreon, dudissidents.com/Substack, or dudissidents.com/locals. If you want to join the locals rumblers, you can join our locals by clicking that bright red join button underneath the screen, or dudissidents.locals.com. Those links work as well. So in exchange for joining, we do give you a bunch of perks that on top of the goodwill of supporting the project. So those include your name up here in lights on the show scroll. You also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As, bonus live streams every month for the film club. We're starting our post-game feature this month as well. So that will be later on this month, where we will do bonus segments for members only with call-ins afterwards on one of the final streams of the month. You also get full-length, ad-free replays of every stream emailed to you the day after they air. So if you miss a stream and you want to watch it back free of ad interruptions, you get that as a perk of joining as well. So we could not do this without our members. Thank you all very much for your support. You can sign up at any of those links up on the screen right now and get immediate access to all those cool perks, as well as the back library of all the member streams. Matrix Manipulator says, I'm a very far right-wing person. So far right, in fact, you could hardly call me a Republican. Literally no one wants to cut Medicare or Social Security. Why are Republicans and congressmen, reps and congressmen, this detached? Well, it's a religion. That's what Russ was saying. I mean, it really is. It really is a religious devotion to that kind of austerity and trickle-down economics. A beautiful bill, says Brandon Guillory. Sounds like a corn hub, that category. Thank you. Appreciate that. I see what you did there. Okay. Big Papa Mau Mau says, many of the original neocons were Trotskyists who fled Russia and came to America. They just swapped the global revolution to spread communism to global domination to spread neoliberal democracy. Well, that is an interesting statement, Big Papa Mau Mau. Janice and oops, sorry. Where's that? Janice Anderson says, Reaganomics equals rebranding of already proven failed economic policy. Horse and swallow, effective 1880s to 1920s, contributed or caused Great Depression. Thank you, Janice Anderson. Skyman2204, thanks for the $10, says, I'm calling it now. If Trump cuts Medicaid, Social Security, or declares a major war, his presidency is effectively doomed. Thank you for that. Voodoo economics is what George H.W. Bush called it. Thank you, Pete Skur. Vito P says, I'm trickling down some money while I still have it. Cancer sucks, you guys rock. Well, thank you, Vito. Appreciate that very much. Nocturnal Human says, I'm 2 hours late. Can you start over? Thank you. Nocturnal Human, up all night must be the reason. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Brad Gilbert says, Noem, I won't tell Emperor Trump he has no clothes. Oh, that's a big part of it, too. She doesn't want to embarrass Trump. Of course, and she doesn't want to contradict him. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
You got your stuff in?
Yeah, my stuff's in.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were next. I'm next.
Yeah, that was mine. Diddy is up now, yeah.
Right, okay. All right, so Diddy's trial has begun. Cassie Ventura, his former paramour and protege, has been testifying to absolutely horrific acts that were committed against her, allegedly, including the fact that Diddy took videos of the freak-offs, and she actually claims that he threatened her as she was trying to get away from him, threatened to release these videos. Now, there's a lot of speculation that Diddy was kind of another Epstein, that he was working for certain interests, and part of his job within that network was to accumulate blackmail material. And we do know that he videoed these freak-offs, and we know with a fair amount of certainty that a lot of people attended these parties who would be very embarrassed to have those videos released. So it doesn't look good for Diddy in this trial. You have some male escorts that he allegedly hired testifying to having been there and seen the abuse, physical abuse against Ventura. Of course, there's that hotel video, indisputable, of Diddy attacking her. But now Chris Cuomo, who is really tight with friend of show Suge Knight, which means we're like 1 degree of separation from Chris Cuomo.
Yeah.
Suge Knight does not seem to think things look as dire for Diddy as they might appear.
I think he got some favors with the government. I think they're going to show him a little leeway. It might not seem like it when it's all said and done, but I don't think he has nothing to worry about. I don't think he's worried because he's going to be federal. And if he gets convicted, Trump's going to pardon him. So what's the worry?
You think the President of the United States would pardon Sean Combs for sex trafficking?
Shit, he pardoned Michael Harris, who allegedly killed a Jewish teenager or had him killed. So they don't care about that. It's all about, what's in it for the long run and what the bucks say and what the power of the people want.
Suge, I got to tell you,
Trump's not scared.
I can't argue with your eyes on the situation because you lived it and you understand the dynamics. And I appreciate you going through all the hoops to call us and weigh in on this.
Okay. All right. So why would Suge Knight believe that? Well, Whitney Webb is doing a 3-part series about Diddy's relationship to a lot of the same kinds of interests that she's discussed in regards to Epstein, but focus particularly on how those interests have infiltrated the hip-hop industry, going back to old school mobsters like the Genovese crime family, the Gambinos. So this is just a little bit of her reporting. One label under blackmail, the early intersections of Diddy and the Epstein network. In part 1 of this series on the overlap between the worlds of Sean Diddy Combs and Jeffrey Epstein, we examine Combs's early years, his mentors, and the industry figures who ensured their, as well as Combs's own, commercial success. Ties to organized crime and intelligence are readily apparent and point toward a truly sinister reason behind this network's patronage of Combs and his close associates like Andre Harrell and Russell Simmons. So a little bit in the article. It should come as no surprise upon closer examination of Sean Combs that, like Epstein, he was operating on behalf of a larger network that he did not ultimately control. Instead, it arguably controlled him. Combs was acting on behalf of an oligarch network that directly overlaps with that of Epstein. However, Combs was used to influence a different industry and a different community for the benefit of these intelligence and organized crime connected oligarchs. Also explored in this piece are the corporations behind the success of Combs's mentors and later Combs himself, namely the Music Corporation of America, MCA, and Arista Records. When taken together with other claims from the period, namely about efforts to manipulate hip-hop for the benefit of the private prison industry in the early to mid-1990s, it appears that this network's interest in Combs, as well as his mentors, was part of something much larger that sought to target not just the hip-hop industry itself, but the African-American community at large. Now, I assume what she's touching on there, she hasn't completed the series, obviously. She's only released part 1 so far, is a lot of observers and researchers have said that the way hip-hop turned towards promotion of kind of a gangsterism and a materialism was intentional to undermine the Black community, to promote violence and internecine fighting so that they couldn't unify. And she's also positing that it was partly for the profit of the private prison industry. So it'll be interesting to see where her series goes in that regard. But Combs's father was a gangster who did heroin business, was an associate of Frank Lucas, the famous figure portrayed by Denzel Washington, an American gangster. And he was probably rubbed out by the Genovese, who suspected he was going to cooperate with the feds. He was doing heroin business with them. So Combs was born and bred into that world. Now, part of what's so unique and frankly dangerous about Whitney Webb's reporting is she gets into, when you read these books about the mob, which I've read quite a lot of, they don't really get into that. Like once in a while, they'll get into some stuff about Trafficante and JFK here and there. It's well known that the mob was asked to protect the ports during World War II. But what Whitney gets into is essentially that the intelligence services and the mob have been working together since World War II. That's portrays the initial contact usually. And that a lot of modern corporations evolve from those gangsters going legit, so-called legit, so that they never really stopped using gangster tactics, which could be, we've speculated a lot. Why is Israel the absolute third rail? Is there really no one with integrity? Well, man, I mean, if you're really dealing with mobsters and gangsters, you know, what happens to you if you really defy them? It seems like that might be the thing that keeps all of these people in line ultimately. If the blackmail doesn't work, you can always have a convenient accident. So Whitney went on Katie Halper's show, and she talked a little bit about this.
The media narrative is about these cases is sort of, you know, very focused on either Diddy or Epstein, and like they were the mastermind of all of this stuff. And these people never exist in a vacuum. They tend to have significant moneyed benefactors that somehow evade persecution or even investigation. That's very obvious in the Epstein case, but I think it's also pretty true as it relates to, you know, the Diddy case as well. And, you know, he learned this behavior that he's now, you know, in prison for and awaiting trial for from, you know, various other figures that have somehow evaded the kind of charges that now face Diddy. And why is that? So the series is meant to sort of explore that, and also, you know, how this broader, I guess, oligarch network that also has a lot of ties to the Epstein situation sort of pop up in the record industry with direct connections to Bad Boy Records and Bad Boy Entertainment, and, you know, some of these other business ventures of Sean Combs. So Clive Davis in particular is the person that is really credited with allowing Bad Boy Records to be a success because, they really wanted to have been successful if they didn't enter into that very early distribution and promo deal with Clive Davis's Arista Records, when they were created. And this is also true of, his mentor, Andre Harrell at Uptown Records. Uptown Records wanted to have been successful if it wasn't for their distribution deal with MCA, for example, which is now Universal Studios. I think the same is true for Russell Simmons' label Def Jam, but I think in their case it was CBS Records, which is also related to sort of the Clive Davis story. And so, there's basically been this unorganized crime effort to dominate those particular labels for some time. And Davis stands accused of people that were once close to, Combs and later became rivals. Like Suge Knight and also his former bodyguard Gene Deal, of sort of training Diddy in this using drugs and sex to control people. Right. And also allegedly Russell Simmons of Def Jam engaged in that same type of behavior and sort of mentored Diddy in that, because Russell Simmons was obviously important, not just for Diddy, but also for Andre Harrell at Uptown Records. And that's how Diddy, Sean Combs, first entered the music industry.
Okay. All right. So it's pretty well known that in the early days of the music industry, the mob was very involved in nightclubs and the early record companies, and a lot of that early doo-wop was produced by them. The Frank Sinatra association with the mob has been pretty well known and pretty well explored. Some of this started with actually a Jewish gangster, Arnold Rothstein, the guy who fixed the 1919 World Series. He was one of the earliest mobsters to see the potential in entertainment because it's mostly a cash business. So it's a very good opportunity to launder money. Who knows how many tickets you sold to the show, right? It just, it was a very good way to move money. So he was actually a big, what they call a Broadway angel, a big Broadway investor, but it was really money laundering for him. So he kind of led the way. That plus prohibition brought them into the nightclub business, which dovetails to the music industry. So it's pretty well known that in early record company history, very often the mob would have a piece of these record companies that were selling doo-wop and rock and roll music, that kind of thing. The fact that never stopped is something that is really not explored, but makes a lot of sense. Now, if you look at a common denominator with Epstein, and particularly with Diddy, this is the second time this book is coming up this week. The idea of using sex and drugs as a means of control is essentially what Tom O'Neill theorizes in his book, Chaos. That's exactly what the book is about. The theory, and Tom is responsible about not getting out over his skis and saying conclusively this is definitely what happened, but his reporting very strongly suggests that Charles Manson was part of an experiment of using drugs and sex as a means of brainwashing and control during his years in San Francisco, and through the infamous San Francisco Free Clinic. It makes a lot of sense when you look at Charles Manson's background. He was just a loser. He was a 3-time loser. He was a convict. Like, he had never been a leader. He had never been somebody who was known for really running gangs or anything. He was a little pipsqueak in prison. So how did a guy like this with no real education develop this concept of in very sophisticated ways using drugs and sex to manipulate and control people like that? So the suggestion in Chaos, very strong suggestion, is that he learned that from operatives who were using him in an experimental effort to develop those techniques. Okay, so now what? This is 50 years ago now. So how far advanced would they be in those techniques since then? It's very interesting that what Tom O'Neill found in his research for Chaos dovetails so much to what Whitney finds with Jeffrey Epstein and with Diddy. that they're operatives for gangsters and intelligence networks who are using sex and drugs as a means of control and blackmail.
Yeah, and that's what makes these stories interesting to me. I honestly, I mean, even though I'm like a, I would say an amateur conspiracy theorist, recreational conspiracy theorist, I would say, the Epstein thing never interested me that much until I got into her angle on it, because now this is more a political issue than what originally meets the eye, right? And then you have to ask yourself, same thing here, obviously. Okay, well, how do these guys go on so long? There's that scene in the Departed where Matt Damon finds out that the Jack Nicholson character has been basically a rat for the FBI. He's been an informant. And Nicholson says something like, grow up. How do you think I made it this far? How do you think I went all this way doing all this stuff without getting put in jail for life? Like, of course I am. Grow up. It's obvious, right? And that's kind of, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the similar thing here. Like, yeah, how do you think this goes on for as long as it does?
Right.
Before somebody blows a whistle on it and someone gets arrested for it. How do you think it involves this many people? As to have, like the number of people who would go to these freak off parties. How does this stuff, how is this allowed to keep going on unless it serves a purpose? It serves a purpose for the government. And yeah, what the book gets into is just that it's standard operating procedure for the government to just coordinate with gangsters, with drug runners, with murderers. Like, they don't think anything of it. So, of course, if guys like Diddy are able to get away with this stuff for so long, it's because it's being supervised to some extent and being allowed to an even greater extent that it's being supervised. I mean, it's the only real explanation for it. And that explains Epstein as well, right? I mean, it's the same thing. Like, this stuff doesn't go on at the scale it goes on with no eyes on it. So then you have to ask, okay, if there are eyes on it, well, why isn't it stopping? That's the big question. That's the big question. And there's a multi-pronged answer to that question, obviously, which is what Whitney digs into so well. But yeah, I mean, when you think about it, of course, it's as obvious as, it should have been to Matt Damon in the movie. Oh, grow up. Of course. Well, how you think I'm out? How you think I'm still out here? Right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. And the music industry, the film industry are such fertile grounds for finding compliant people that you can draw into this kind of activity, because the people in those industries are usually damaged and desperate.
Right.
Exactly. Well, this is the price. This is the price. You want to be a big star? This is the price. How many are going to say, you know what, I'm going to go back home and work in a craft store?
Right. Exactly. And the lifestyle and the decadence, the hedonism, that's how you get sucked in. And once you're in, you're in. Just like the mob. Once you're in, you're in. Once you agree to do them that first favor, you're going to do them favors until they decide you're not worth it to them anymore. Right?
Yep.
Like, once they get you, you're hooked. And yeah, so I buy all this. Whether he'll get pardoned, that speaks directly to this. Well, okay, if he were to be pardoned, why? Now, it's an open question whether or not he would be pardoned. Obviously, that seems like an outrageous thing to say.
I don't think he would be pardoned, but I think Suge knows what of he speaks.
Right, he knows
in
what he's
terms
talking
of
about.
Why he might get pardoned.
If he flees to South Africa and starts a farm, maybe he'll get pardoned.
That would get him pardoned.
Yes,
that would get him pardoned. If he agrees to donate a certain amount of his wealth for the protection of the genocided white Afrikaner community.
Just give all of his mansions to the Afrikaners. There's only 60 of them.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. It's an offer they can't refuse. The hell happened? What, I got lint in my mouth? Sparky. Hey, Sparky. Long time no see, Sparky. By the way, your girl Pam Bondi has many conflicts of interest. Matt Gaetz would have been better. Yeah, he would have been better. That's why he didn't get through. And, he sounds better because he didn't get through. If he got through, they'd have broken him. He'd have sounded just like her if they got through. What do you think? They're going to let Matt Gaetz come in there and say, yeah, we shouldn't harass people who criticize Israel. No, if he got in, they'd have given him the same talking to that they give a lot of these people, and he'd sound more or less like Pam Bondi. That's what I think. And that's why he's not there.
Again, it's like the frog in the pot of boiling water. Like, we're getting used to it. It is so bizarre, the level of absolute subservience that you get from these cabinet members around Trump. We
Yeah.
just saw it in the Noem segment. Pam Bondi is embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank our wonderful president. This is not normal. This is not normal.
RFK.
This is something you'll see in banana republics.
Yeah.
Right? Where Trump needs some epaulets.
Right.
His
Yeah.
cap there. It's pretty bizarre. And Pam Bondi, I decided not to do this today because to do it justice, I got to put more time into it. The stuff with the meme coins and the plane from Qatar. Pam Bondi was a lobbyist for Qatar.
Yes. Yep. Cease the Cassie the abused body Ventura. Thank you. Stoop sign. Sparky says Kristi Noem has very deep psychological issues. A serial killer? I wouldn't be surprised. Debsmo, thanks for the $20 super sticker, Debsmo. Appreciate that. Sparky says, was Clive Davis involved in Whitney Houston's death? Maybe having her killed. I kind of liked her. Kind of like Whitney Houston. Andy Fight, thanks for the donation. Appreciate that. In my day, says Sparky, we pronounced it Arista Records. Arista Records. Okay, there you go. Thank you, Sparky. Appreciate that. All right, folks, we're going to move right along. Okay, Miss Rachel has been in the news lately. We did a segment on Miss Rachel a few weeks ago when Stop Anti-Semitism tried to get her investigated for her posts that sympathize with the children of Gaza. I won't even call them pro-Palestine posts because she doesn't engage in the politics of the conflict at all. She engages it on the level you would expect a children's YouTuber to, with sympathy for children. So here's a really disgraceful article by the New York Times. They should be ashamed to have printed this article. Why tot celebrity Ms. Rachel waded into the Gaza debate. She does not wade into the debate. She does not litigate one-state solution, two-state solution, arms embargo, this, that. She expresses human sympathy for children in hell. That is what she does. Facing criticism, Rachel Accurso, her last name, defends making the plight of children in Gaza a primary focus on her social media feeds. Ms. Rachel, whose real name is Rachel Griffin Accurso, at times presents a different side of herself on social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram, where the content is geared less toward toddlers and more toward their parents. There, her millions of followers will also find impassioned videos touching on current events. These focus on the push for universal childcare and geopolitical crises that have led to suffering children, above all, the ongoing war in Gaza. On Monday, Accurso posted to her Instagram account photos of a meeting she said she had last week with Rahaf, a 3-year-old girl from Gaza who lost her legs in an airstrike, and the child's mother. The meeting was arranged through the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. So here is the photo that she posted with the girl whose legs are amputated. That's the photo that they just referred to there. Rahaf's mother and I both love our children with all of our hearts, Accurso wrote, adding, my son will have dinner tonight, a story and snuggle with me, school in the morning, and hers won't, referring to Rahaf's brother in Gaza. The post was followed by an interview on news site Zeteo, combining to make this Accurso's most outspoken few days to date on this subject. Now, this is kind of a trailer that Mehdi Hassan, I guess, cut together. We can't show you this because the music in this is a copyright flag. I tried it. But the quote from this is, I think it should be controversial to not say anything about Gaza. I spoke to YouTube star and children's educator Ms. Rachel about her outspoken support for Palestinian kids and the bad faith attacks on her in response. So this is a portion with no superimposed music, so we can play this for you. It just doesn't make sense because as grown-ups, we know what children need. So here she is.
Moment in those few months after October 7th when our feeds were just crazy. I'm just wondering, as someone who's just an ordinary American, not Miss Rachel, the YouTube creator, was there something that just stopped you in your tracks?
There are multiple that I can't forget. There was a little boy who was really shocked and he was shaking, and his eyes were just, there was so much terror in his eyes, and a healthcare worker was being so compassionate, and you see that compassion, and he finally was able to cry because he was just so shocked he couldn't even cry. And then Hinderjob's voice on the phone.
Yes.
I'll never forget. And I know some people can't even listen because it's so hard, but, and I think that's.
Henry Job was the girl who was shot. I forget the amount of times, but just unspeakable amount of times in a car.
You know, that's so understandable, but as just, yeah, her voice and a little boy who was staring at the wall who had lost his whole family and just was staring. And then there was a little, oh my gosh, sorry, a child in like a rainbow onesie. And my daughter has a rainbow onesie, and I had to give it away because, you know, you just see that and it just doesn't make any sense, because as grown-ups, we know what children need and what they deserve and what will help them grow into happy, healthy adults. And it will benefit us all. It's right to speak out because this is wrong, but it's also right to speak out because it's going to benefit everyone.
Yep. No lies detected there. It's so clear how we should treat children to help them thrive and grow into happy, healthy adults, Accurso said, responding to questions over email. We need to stop failing them, she said, adding that in particular, no children should have their crucial brain development ages of 0 to 3 interrupted by trauma. So I guess they reached out to her and she responded to their questions via email. And this is where this gets to a point where, like I said, the New York Times should really think about what they did here and even asking her a lot of these questions. But Accurso's advocacy on behalf of Gaza children has led some supporters of Israel to accuse her of treating Palestinian children with more sympathy than Israeli ones, including those abducted in Hamas's attack of October 7th. Last month, the advocacy group Stop Anti-Semitism labeled Accurso the anti-Semite of the week. The anti-Semite of the week. By the way, she has on repeat occasion. We did a whole segment about this.
I just can't even.
On repeat occasion, we've showed you in the previous segment that we did on this. I'll link to it when we post this video. All of the instances where she has actually expressed sympathy for Israeli children. Sorry. So yeah, that was their example of anti-Semitism. And the New York Post reported sent a letter urging Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate whether Accurso is receiving funding to further Hamas's agenda. Wow. Wow. Last month, the advocacy group Stop Anti-Semitism labeled her the anti-Semite of the week and urged Pam Bondi to investigate her. Accurso posted nearly 50 times about the children of Gaza, most of which is filled with misinformation from Hamas, and only 5 times about Israeli children. The group, which monitors statements about Israel on social media accounts of prominent figures, said on its website. In the case of the Israeli children, she only posted due to widespread public backlash, never condemning Hamas and the Palestinians. So they want her to condemn the Palestinians as well. Accurso, 42, in an emailed response, denied having received money from Hamas. This accusation is not only absurd, it's patently false, she said. Now, if you're the New York Times, why would you even ask her? She's not a political person, obviously. She runs a children's YouTube social. She's probably not as hip to what the media is going to try to do to her. You remember we did a story a while back where it was one of these type of outlets. I don't want to name it because I don't want to get it wrong. But they were doing some smear piece on, I think it was Tucker Carlson, and they asked him for comment. And he writes them back, basically, go fuck yourself. No, you're asking me to help write a smear piece about me. I'm not
that was
giving
in
you
Australia.
the comment. Yeah, exactly. I'm not giving you I'm not going to give you the material that you need to write this smear piece on me. Like, the fact, it's such an undignified thing to even ask her. Like, you're the New York Times. You know, if there's absolutely zero evidence to back that claim, you don't even bother asking her. You just write, that's a ridiculous claim for which there is no evidence. The way they kind of massage the sort of both sidesism into this article is really pretty awful. She did not dispute that she has posted more frequently about Gazan children. The painful reality, she said, is that Palestinian children in Gaza have been killed by the thousands and continue to be killed, maimed, and starved right now. The idea that caring about one group of children prevents us from caring about another group of children is false. Yes, when the Bebas kids were killed, she posted that was horrible, as any decent human would think that the killing of a child is something to be mourned. What she points out here is, of course, when it happens thousands of times more to one side, yes, they're going to get more sympathy because it happens more often. Unfortunately, you get the opportunity to express sympathy with those losses much more because the death count is so lopsided on one side. So once again, the fact that they're coming after this woman is just so disgraceful. And you saw her in that video. I mean, she's just such a sweet person with basic decency who now has to get dragged into this. And if you're the New York Times, why aren't you reaching out to stop anti-Semitism? Why aren't you doing an expose on them for baselessly calling for the government to investigate a children's YouTuber for expressing sympathy for the children of a genocide? You want to call it a conflict for your purposes? Whatever. The point is, she's there to express sympathy for innocent children who are killed. She is not even wading into the debate. Have you heard what she thinks should be the solution to settle the conflict? You hear her talk about a two-state solution, 1967 border. She doesn't touch that. She doesn't touch that. She engages with this the way you would expect someone like her, given her field, to engage this. And they go after her like that. And the New York Times doesn't even have the integrity to take a side on this issue. This should have been an expose on the smear campaign against her. They shouldn't be emailing her, hey, they say you get funding to spread Hamas propaganda. What do you have to say about that? See, if she were more versed in this space, she would have sent them a text the way Tucker did, which is, no, fuck you. Not doing it. I think Jimmy was approached by one of these rags to smear him, and he wrote back the same thing. No, I'm not going to help you smear me. Thanks very much. Good luck with your article. That's what you should have said to them. Instead, she engaged them, probably because she's too innocent to really know the machinations of this world. I don't think she expected them to treat those accusations with any validity at all, since they're clearly just absolutely fucking absurd.
Yeah, she's clearly just a very kind person, kind of, perfectly suited to what she does, obviously very empathetic, very, connected to her emotions. And I'm sure that reads to children. That's why she's been so wildly successful in that space, because that authenticity, that warmth comes across as soon as you see her. And children respond very strongly I find, to people who have that kind of a presence. The New York Times would never write that article. I mean, really, there should be an investigative piece on groups like Batar, on groups like Stop Anti-Semitism, that are clearly functioning within our body politic to suppress open debate and open speech. And you want to talk about getting foreign funding? What, these groups aren't getting foreign funding? Why don't you ask them about where their funding comes from? The New York Times, it would never occur to them to ask these kinds of questions. As soon as Israel went after her, though, if there's a hopeful element in this story, they're losing the plot. Like, that's what it tells you. They're getting desperate. And you have to remember, they are so ensconced in their vision of the world, in which Jews are just these horribly victimized people in all circumstances, can never be the victimizers, that any word against the state of Israel, which they have improperly conflated with Judaism, stolen the identity of Judaism and made it synonymous with Israel. Any criticism of anything that Israel does is equivalent to Nazism, is adjacent to Nazism. They are so far into that they can't see how much they are damaging their cause, their public relations, even amongst people who would have been sympathetic. I can tell you, over the course of my lifetime, nobody really spoke against Israel at one time. It was just a given. Yeah, Holocaust, that's it. Nobody would question Israel. Now, I mean, and particularly given their wonderful, outstanding Hasbara over the last couple of years, which is almost entirely backfired, I think. At this point, most people have a negative view of Israel. One night, maybe for a movie night, because it's on YouTube. You want to give people some hope? I want to show the 1978 anniversary special that Barbra Streisand did, honoring Israel. And I want you to imagine them putting that on a network today. It would be impossible. It would be impossible. So there has been a shift. The truth is coming out, and they're not helping themselves by going after sweet YouTube children's creators.
No. But the reason they do is because, and I mentioned this the first time we covered this, you know, the apolitical Instagram mom is a pretty broad demographic. There are a lot of people who fit that description, who don't have the time or the bandwidth available to them because they're moms. And, you know, I live with a mom. It's hard being a mom. It takes a lot of time to be a mom. You don't get as versed in these things as you might, you know, if you had more time in your hands. They see that coming across their feed. That educates them on this topic in a way that they might not otherwise be educated because they don't have the time or the bandwidth to pursue that kind of insight. And that's what makes her a threat to them. Because yes, we all know, okay, yes, the campus radicals are going to be pro-Palestine and they hate that, and so they go after them. But Miss Rachel taps into a whole nother demographic who might not otherwise dislike Israel. And now you say, hey, you know what? Whatever your politics are, I don't care with Democrat, Republican, whoever, as a mother, as someone with children, when you see this happening to children, aren't you furious at those doing this to them? That's that's as basic as it gets. And she's got huge reach, and it's a real threat, which is why they're going after her. But yeah, ultimately the effect of this is a backfire. Of course, you look ridiculous coming after this woman with a pink T-shirt and overalls playing ukulele for 3-year-olds.
Well, there's what I'm saying. Like, you have to be so buried in your own you have to be a victim of your own propaganda to the point that you can't rationally evaluate pros and cons. There is absolutely no upside to going after this woman, which any rational actor would realize before doing it.
Exactly. Sparky, thanks for the $10. How does this stuff go on so long without self-destructing? Government sponsorship. Look at how many legit, well-meaning startups, small businesses, clubs, or other entities didn't last even a year or two. Andy Fight says, blame rock music for the drop in our intelligence. Thank you, Andy Fight. Appreciate that.
Stop.
Kenman G says, Whitney Webb was originally going to do a piece on P. Diddy's association with Naomi Campbell, a good friend of Ghislaine Maxwell. I wonder how connected she is. Excuse me, to all of this.
I think her series is gonna get into that. Like, she's only dropped part 1 that gets into kind of his childhood and, you know, or adolescence.
Right. Kemen G says, I'm surprised the New York Times didn't get Thomas Friedman to write the article about Ms. Rachel. He would call her a slow loris pato, an exotic animal that looks sweet but secretes toxic chemicals. That's funny. Good one, Kemen. Appreciate that. Good one, my friend. Good one. All right, we got one more on the day, one more segment. The Democrats. We'll end on a light note.
I call this piece Slaughtering the Hog.
Yeah.
So David Hogg went on what any of us who have had the misfortune to have any kind of involvement in the Democratic Party with the theory that it can be reformed. He went on what one might call a fool's errand to reform the party. So this is what he said recently about this on MSNBC.
Fighting to give you the best person to represent you possible, regardless of whether or not you're in a purple district or a very blue district. And ultimately, it's not me or any member of the DNC that is deciding these elections. It's the voters in these districts. And all we're trying to say here is let's give people the option when our party has a record low approval rating to say, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're trying to address that, and here's how we're trying to use democracy ourselves to build the strongest Democratic Party possible so that we can get back to giving people an alternative vision for our country. That is not simply saying that we're against Donald Trump, because here's the question that I would pose to the people that don't agree with this. If this is not the answer,
what is?
How are we going to address that approval rating? I know this is controversial, but look, we are not challenging people that are in competitive seats that could risk us losing a majority in state legislatures or in Congress, and we're only challenging Democratic members in safe seats for the U.S. House. That's it. And we're also going to be supporting people running in competitive races. And what I'll tell you, what I'm looking at, Simone, is not who is calling me saying, oh my God, this is so great what you're doing necessarily from inside of DC. What I'm looking at is who are the young people? What are they saying? And I've never had so many young people come up to me to say thank you for what you're doing. I was losing faith in politics. I was losing faith in the Democratic Party, but you've helped to reinstill it. And that's what matters here. We can't have a future of our party when we are losing vote share with every single demographic except the elderly and people with PhDs, basically.
And with that, Nancy Pelosi's heart grew 3 times larger. No, not so much, not so much. So all he's saying with his organization, an outside organization that he works with, primarying these sclerotic, elderly Democrats only in safe blue seats, only in seats that could not possibly go to Republicans. So they heard that, right? Oh, breaking. DNC panel has voted to oust David Hogg and nullify his victory because it violated gender diversity rules. Now, to be fair, look, everybody's piling on the DNC now. They're all saying they're pushing him out because he wanted to primary these ensconced Democrats. But if you just watch this is their DNC chair vote in which they lay out the gender rules for electing the DNC slate. It's very obvious to anyone, even a 3-year-old could understand this. It's very obvious that they did violate the gender rules. I think you'll agree after listening to a little of this.
Specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced.
Right.
With the results of the previous 4 elections, our elected officers are currently 2 male and 2 female.
Exactly.
In order to be gender balanced,
it's so obvious.
It's easy. Yeah. Simple.
We must elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. So again, this is what we have to do for this vice chair race. We have to elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. To ensure our process accounts for male, female, and non-binary candidates, we conferred with our RBC co-chair, our LGBT caucus co-chair, and others to ensure that the process is inclusive and meets the gender balance requirements in our rules.
Right, okay.
To do this, our process will be slightly different than the one outlined to you earlier this week. But I hope you will see that in practice, it is simple and transparent.
Yeah, totally simple.
The order of balloting is designed to ensure equal access to the ballot, regardless of gender identity. As we must elect a candidate of any gender as well as 1 male and 1 female vice chair, we will first ask members to elect a candidate of any gender on the first ballot. Any candidate, male, female, and non-binary, can be elected on that ballot. After a candidate is elected on the first ballot, we'll have 1 officer of the 3, so then we will know which position is filled of the 1 male, 1 female, and 1 vice chair of any gender.
Now I
second
get it.
ballot.
So there's got to be a non-binary on the second ballot and then a Zim on the third ballot, unless there are enough votes to
You need a
supersede the first ballot.
Zem on the 4th ballot.
Right.
And then it goes to a runoff. And then after the runoff, they have to do ranked choice.
Yeah, so what's the story here? I mean, this was clearly a violation. I mean, it's simple as that.
It's clearly has nothing to do with his wanting to primary these elderly Democrats.
For a candidate of any gender. Then our third ballot will be the third position that is remaining based on the 2 results. Either a male candidate if a candidate that is not male has not been elected, or a female candidate if a female has not been elected.
Okay, all right. So is that clear enough? What are you, dumb?
What do you want?
What are you, dumb?
Exactly. What do you? Yeah.
Obviously, there was a violation of the gender rules.
Yeah.
Couldn't be simpler.
Now, perhaps it's not too late for David Hogg to do something about that.
He could transition.
Yeah, exactly.
He could transition. Are those drugs still available, or did Trump outlaw them?
But absent that, he obviously has to go. He's got 2 choices. He
Clearly.
can either go Zem
or Z-Zim.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly. Zay-Zem or were. You're out.
Yep. DNC panel finds Hogg and another official weren't properly elected to leadership. We will get to the other official. A Democratic National Committee panel found that David Hogg and another vice chair were not properly elected this year, setting off a process that could lead to Hogg's ouster amid backlash to his plans to support primary challengers to House Democrats. The Credentials Committee's recommendation will get a vote from the full DNC membership. If approved, the two vice chair elections will be invalidated and new elections will be held as soon as practicable. The new elections will be limited to the same 5 candidates who were eligible at the February vote. The challenge to the election was filed more than 2 months ago before Hogg's announcement about primary challenges by Kaylin Free, an Oklahoma activist who unsuccessfully sought one of the vice chair slots in the February 1st election. She argued the DNC broke its rules on gender diversity in party officer elections, invalidating the election of Hogg and a second vice chair, Malcolm Kenyatta. But the challenge took on additional significance as Hogg faced criticism from some in the party because of his organization's $20 million effort to primary, quote, out of touch, ineffective incumbent Democrats. DNC Chairman Ken Martin has maintained that party officers such as Hogg should stay neutral in primaries. Now, I just want to point out they're trying to hide, in my opinion, hide behind the fact that she lodged this challenge 2 months ago. No, it has nothing to do with that. This challenge was filed 2 months ago. Yeah, it was filed 2 months ago, but you didn't rule in favor of this challenge until well after he made that announcement. Given what we saw at that clown show you called a race for DNC chair, I am sure you are flooded with crackpot disputes after every DNC chair election from that freak show you call a party.
They probably protest the seating chart on those grounds.
Exactly. And you just too close to the door.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you just ignore those things when they're inconvenient. You found a convenient challenge and you decided to elevate it to the level of validity.
Right.
So this is David Hogg made a statement on this. Today, the DNC took its first steps to remove me from my position as vice chair at large. While this vote was based on how the DNC conducted its officers' elections, which I had nothing to do with, it is also impossible to ignore the broader context of my work to reform the party, which loomed large over this vote. Our country is in crisis, and too many leaders in the Democratic Party are asleep at the wheel. Trump is on a mission to crash our economy, disappear people without due process, and participate in flagrant public corruption, and voters still trust him more than Democrats. That is a massive indictment of our party. Wow, what a radical. Can't believe he's saying that. Last month, my organization announced that it would primary ineffective members of Congress who are not meeting the moment. In response, the DNC made it clear they were going to remove me due to the necessity of, quote, neutrality for the party. This is despite the fact that the DCCC, DSCC, and other party committees regularly get involved in primaries. You might remember Nancy Pelosi after claiming that she doesn't get involved in primaries. She just backs whoever the winner is, went and backed Michael Kennedy. It was Michael Kennedy against the sitting Democrat. Who was that? It's like on the tip of my tongue. He took some positions that not Markham. What was his name? Markley.
Oh, yeah. Markey.
Markey, right.
Well, there's Markey and Merkley. There's Jeff Merkley, and then there's Ed Markey. So I don't know which one.
Okay, the people in the chat will know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Pelosi, after making a big show of how she doesn't get involved in primaries, and then her excuse was the Kennedys are old friends of her family.
Oh, so that would have been Markey, yeah, because it was Massachusetts. Yeah, Ed Markey,
yep.
right?
Ed Markey.
Ed
there
Markey,
you go.
that's the guy, yeah.
Last month, my organization, just this month, the Democratic Lieutenant Governors Association pledged a 7-figure ad spend to elect a candidate in a primary in Illinois. Past DNC vice chairs have endorsed candidates in primaries as well without any issue. I ran to be DNC vice chair to help make the Democratic Party better, not to defend an indefensible status quo that has caused voters in almost every demographic group to move away from us. The DNC has pledged to remove me, and this vote has provided an avenue to fast track that effort. That's too much for them. So anybody who thinks you're going to go change this party from within, you're going to reform the party, you're going to back the Mamdani guy in New York, he's going to reform the Democratic Party. It is a fool's errand, my friend. This is who you're talking about. Heads I win, tails you lose. That should be the motto of the party. If you get close to making some kind of change, like say Bernie Sanders wins the first 3 primary states, something no one has ever done, and not gone on to win the nomination subsequently, they'll find a way to make sure you do not get the nomination. You can get your million volunteers tramping around in the snows of New Hampshire in the dead of winter all you want. You can have a big Medicare for all cakewalk right through Nancy Pelosi's living room. They are not going to let you take any meaningful control of the party. The best you're going to do is an AOC who got her mind right, that they can use as a figurehead to sheepdog and dupe some people into the party, which is what they would have done with Hogg if he had just kept his mouth shut. That was clearly the career path they had him on, and they surprised them by asserting some small measure of independence. So his co-vice chair there is pretty pissed off that he's getting all the press and he's not getting any attention. Now wait for it. The punchline. That's a
violation. Yeah.
That's a violation. Yeah. The punchline on this is pretty funny. The punchline is pretty funny. Wait for it. 100 days ago, I was elected as a vice chair of the DNC with 298 votes, well above the 201.5 threshold to win. David Hogg received only 214.5. There's very mean girls here.
Yes.
Today, the DNC he only got 214.5. I got well over that, and nobody's talking about me. Today, the DNC Credentials Committee heard a complex challenge to this election and voted for a new one to be held. I have thoughts. First, yes, I disagree with the ruling, but ultimately the committee voted, and I respect their votes because I want a career in this party, even when I really disagree. Second, the press has been breathless in covering the main character they've chosen, David Hogg. They are rushing to do it again. I called BS. BS, I tell you. The easy story is to make this a continuation of David Fights the Party, which is nonsense, to be honest. Reporters can call me to explain more. Please call me, please.
Yes.
So that means the average person sadly has heard about me, sadly has not, he means, heard about me, my dominating win in this race, or what I've done since. So let me. My name is Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. I am one of 2 people serving under the age of 35 in DNC leadership, which frankly, that in and of itself is an indictment. I've consistently done the hard and unglamorous work to change this party, which I was elected to do with no fanfare and no pay. In 100 days, I've traveled 19,805 miles. I've done nearly 3 dozen events. I've been to 8 states and traveled to visit our Dems abroad. I've raised money for this party through call time and events. Quite a reformer. Keep that in mind. So yes, I'm pissed that this challenge was successful, especially when I won in such a resounding way. But here we are. That being said, this challenge was brought well before David's announcement with LWD. And any reporter covering this as party retribution against David is full of shit. It is unfortunate, as I believe we both won fairly, and there is no charge that we acted improperly. However, any story about this that neatly places this into a narrative about David Hogg is wrong. I've worked my ass off to get this role. and have done the job every day since I've held it. This story is complex, and I'm frustrated, but it's not about David Hogg, even though he clearly wants it to be. Dun, dun, dun. All right, are you ready? Are you ready? Ken Klippenstein for the win for finding this. Kenyatta, back in July 2024. Joe Biden has a stutter and a deep, clear, and thoughtful understanding of the major issues affecting our nation and our world. He's working tirelessly to change the party from within.
Yep.
Tirelessly. That is what you call a careerist, my friends, a careerist. Look at the language he chose. I don't like the decision, but I accept their decision. He talks about how he's been working, but he doesn't tell you any specific reforms that he's trying to get pushed. He just tells you mileage, how many miles he put on the car. He doesn't actually tell you what he's doing going to these activities. This is a guy trying to get ahead in the party.
Yep.
That's what that is. That's what that is. He's not actually trying to do shit. And he's pissed off that David. And not only that, he carried the DNC's water within this supposed demand that he get his props for trying to reform the party by saying that this vote had absolutely nothing to do with David Hogg's primary challenges, which is obviously bullshit. So that's pretty funny at the end of that whole tweet storm. Good on Ken. Ken wins the internet this week. So just a couple comments on this. Very funny that David Hogg probably could have waltzed his way into careerist figurehead status in the DNC, but because he decided to try to do anything to shake up the ossified party, they're going to get rid of him entirely. LOL. Yep, that seems to be about the size of it. David Hogg being too radical for the DNC shows we're all so very, very cooked.
Yes.
So yeah, pretty funny. Pretty funny.
And
that's why we don't fuck with the Democrats, man.
Of course. Right, of course. Well, on the Kenyatta front, I had a feeling that's where it was going because his fealty to Biden actually goes beyond that. He's so non-reformist. A lot of people don't remember this, but Kenyatta ran for Senate in Pennsylvania in 2022. He's from Philly, and he ran in the primary against Fetterman. And when he was orienting himself for that Senate run, he came out very early on. I believe he was the first, maybe not the first, but one of the first. I'm pretty sure it was the first Pennsylvania elected official to endorse Joe Biden for president in 2020 in the primary because he knew he wanted to run for Senate and he wanted to get the party brass on his side. So he comes out and endorses Joe Biden very, very early on and then runs against Fetterman. And I was actually shocked Fetterman won that primary. I thought Kenyatta would win because I thought the establishment would coalesce behind him. And at that time, Fetterman, I mean, you talk about how a year is a lifetime in politics. At that time, Fetterman was branding himself kind of with the Bernie progressive left, right? But yeah, no, Kenyatta has always been a total careerist suck-up. And so it's of course complete bullshit for him to act as if he's been out here doing the work of trying to reform the party.
He's doing the work. They just don't want to give props to a black man.
Yeah, right, exactly. So David Hogg gave it his best shots, but that's what happens, right? Fuck around and find out.
Yep.
That's the lesson of that.
He's gonna join Worker Strike Back now.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Him and Shama have been talking.
Yeah, they should offer him that. See if they can work something out.
Offer him vice chair of Worker Strike.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Andy Fight says rock was a mob project from the beginning. The level dropped precipitously. Hip hop degraded the level further. The songs from the 30s put everything since to shame. Love you guys. Hi from Stockholm. Hi there, Andy Fight. Well,
that sounds like a man who has never treated himself to Yes's instrumental 3-album Tales of Topographic Oceans.
Yes. That is a good one. But yes, you're a 30s music chauvinist there. Interesting there, my friend. But thank you, and yeah, greetings from Stockholm. Absolutely, you get to enjoy some prime time due dissidence over there. All right, where are we going here?
Where do I hide my money?
Yeah,
Email us.
Yes. Sparky wondered if U.S. troops kicked out of Niger and ended up in Cote d'Ivoire would invade Burkina Faso. The U.S. sent Al-Qaeda instead for plausible deniability. Long live Ibrahim Traore. Yes, thank you. We should cover that, actually. Maybe on Sunday. Stim confused, says Aberrant Yoendo. Thank you very much. Jessica May says, my grandfather was in politics. His famous saying was, they don't want change. If they wanted change, there would be change. Exactly. Thank you, Jessica. I have two words for Hogg. Oh, Seth Rich. Interesting. Racecar 789. Thanks for the $20. Hey, guys, on yesterday's live stream, Misty said vegetables don't have a gender. However, I think vegetables actually do have a gender with that whole pollination thing going on. Who knows? Vegetables are complicated, man. Thank you, Racecar. Appreciate that. Brad Gilbert says Malcolm lists 4 things. Trucker 3, Musk wanted 5. There you go. Thank you. I'm surprised the New York Times didn't guess Thomas. Oh, got that one already. All right. David Hogg makes sense, but is as annoying as a Razorback in heat. David Hogg should become Miss Piggy. There you go. Thank you. If David is serious, he would go hog wild and get famous Congresswoman and pig castrator Joni Ernst to transition him so he can keep his seat. That's what I said. That's what I said. No justice, no penis.
If he's really dedicated, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Eric Cuso. Yes, no justice, no penis. If David Hogg only had a bonus hole, he could have saved the Democrat Party. That's right. That's right, Eric Cuso. That's what I thought. Okay, let's see here. Sorry about the bad news, guys. After a record-breaking 9 straight weeks as Anti-Semites of the Week, you were knocked off by Miss Rachel. That's right. That's right. She dethroned us. Damn it. Jessica May says, my grandfather also would say that what Russ just said, go to work, state job, keep your mouth shut, and go home. I was fired in 2017 and made a new path. My grandfather was a loyal Delaware Democrat politician. Thank you, Jessica, for that. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks, that is our show. Thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate you all as always. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you are following us on the Rumble. Thanks, everybody, for a great week. We are going to take our weekend, and we will see you back on Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, thanks for spending the afternoon with us. Thanks to the YouTubers. Thanks to the Rumblers. To the mods for keeping the peace in the chat. Thanks for helping us out. We will see you all Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, thanks for hanging out with us this afternoon. Be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.